whatever place, whatever market, and the first thing they would do is they would do an offering to the gods to make sure that they ended up getting a good deal on whatever trade they had. So maybe they're trading for furs, maybe they're trading for, you know, some kind of jewelry, that kind of stuff. They would trade this, and if they didn't get a good price, at the end of the day, if they didn't get a good price, they would go back to this altar and basically say, you know, I didn't get a good price for this. They would still put money at that statue, but then they would stick around until they did get a good price. And that just goes to show you how many times these guys would just try to figure out which god it was, who was going to pay attention to them, and the assumption that the moment something worked out for them, it was not only the gods, obviously, it was their hard work, of course, but just how flexible they were in trying to figure out who it was that was making adjustments in their life and what they needed to do. Also, remember this, once again, a lot of ancestor worship, so they did the same thing there. I love this scene here and just how far you can see. One of the things I've noticed is that when you look at Ubisoft's games, you look at a lot of open world games, but in particular Ubisoft's, and you look at Far Cry versus Assassin's Creed, I truly believe, especially because I just played 5 some more and a little bit of 6, Assassin's Creed really has pushed that draw distance out an amazing amount. And we're talking about in like-for-like kind of instances, maybe a tree, forest somewhere where you're standing. I'm actually really impressed by how far they push the draw distance out. Now, you're going to get LOD popping at times, which if you don't know what that is, it just means it's switching a bush that's far away from a very low detailed item to something more mid-detail and then possibly up-close detail. But I know a lot of people will see a character like Magni and go, I just, you know, I'm not a fan of the way this character looks. I wish they would spend more time on it. And I get it. I completely see where you're coming from. There's a couple things that I'm pretty impressed by, and that's that, for example, their facial hair, while it's not perfect, it can be pretty ragtag. In fact, I still think it's better than a lot of games that I see where they're not doing half as much as a Far Cry game. That is pretty cool. Hair is pretty cool. You see a lot of clipping on armor. They're obviously not worried that, for example, Eivor, when you put a long beard on it like I do, you can see all that clipping. I don't care. I've got it on there. It's not killing me. I think it's fine the way it is because he looks cool in his cutscenes kind of stuff. But it's just really impressive to see them take this. And this is Anvil 2.0. And the idea of having worked with Anvil, having adjusted it in the prior games, especially in Unity, where they introduced the meta AI. That's really where Unity started everything, was the meta AI and the desire to put a bunch of people on screen. It's so interesting because then the next 2 games didn't need a bunch of people on the screen. So they did all this work for Unity, and it did have its issues. And then they switched over towards 2 games that weren't most of the time requiring a ton of people on the screen, like the crowds that you would see. So we get these multiple games that are pushing multiple characters on the screen at any one time, and then we jump into Valhalla, and you look at Valhalla, and it's completely the opposite. It's pushing out the draw distance. To give you an idea, though, of some of what they were doing and some that's come into Valhalla, they usually track around 12,000 dynamic items within 1 kilometer of the character, whether they're in that virtual state or the player state or some other kind of state. As I told you before, they're always tracking that, and those bulk updates versus discrete updates happen around the character. That is a ton of items around the game screen. It's a ton of distance around this character with all these things being tracked, something that we see other games attempt to do. You see something like Elder Scrolls where perhaps there's a bit too much of tracking, and you get some issues where maybe it would be a little bit better if those things didn't go haywire where a character wasn't right there next to him. But I really challenge you to watch a GDC on any of these games and sit back and not be utterly surprised by how much they've attempted to do. It's very easy to get lost within the end result with after your purchase and think, oh, no work was done on these, but a lot of times a great deal was. And that's easily one of the largest misconceptions or misrepresentations of a walking the walk video that I see a lot of times, where somebody will notice that I have rated a game a weight and then I do a video walking the walk on it, and they're just beside themselves. They can't believe that I spent any extra energy on a game I didn't say was worth $60 day one. So I've talked about this before, and I'll talk about it again here. The sound issues. Yes, it is true. Valhalla had some sound issues. I definitely noticed while I was doing the review, but they just sounded odd. In fact, they sounded odd enough that at times I thought there was a chance that it was related to the story, because I had never heard something like this before. Just a slight different tonal change to them. And what's been found out as the game has continued to go on is that they were actually recorded at what you would consider to be the wrong bit rate, not enough. Now, if you understand this, you'll hear people talking about a lossless or a lossy compression ratio. And so you get a sound and you compress it down and you should be fine. Well, what actually happens is a lot of times when you don't have a lot of bit rate when you're first doing that, a lot of sample numbers when you're first doing that, what happens is the high and lows sort of connect up above what a person can hear and below that what they can hear. So cutting it off and then compressing that can actually do damage to the sound that's within the hearing able part. And that's what's happened in this game. It was so bad, by the way, that people have contacted Ubisoft, and Ubisoft actually had to do a pretty open, wide discussion on their FAQ and state, listen, it can't be fixed. It's just not going to be possible to fix this. They would have to condense it. They would have to figure out a way and upload it again into whatever packages you have in your systems, and they're not going to do that. And we could argue for years about how this happened. It could have been an oversight. They had multiple people working on the audio. This is something we saw on Forbidden West from the Horizon guys on the PlayStation. We didn't see an error, by the way. I want to make sure that that's clear. What we saw was multiple composers, multiple sound people working. Something just didn't turn out right. Somebody had a setting off, and it went through all the way. No one knows how this happened, and they're not going to sit there and be like, we're going to jam up one person. But it is something that they have acknowledged is for sure a thing. They know that it is a problem, and because of the way the game is made and because of the streaming and everything that they put into place, it's just not going to be fixed. As a sound guy, it breaks my heart a little bit, especially when you realize that Origins had one or two issues with some low samples. Odyssey had a couple, but those really do shine when it comes to their audio department, definitely more so than Valhalla. And Valhalla, with these wide open spaces and then deep, damp corridors and closed off dungeons, should have had a good deal of sound within them that really did validate your feeling of exploring this ancient England. And instead, not really. One particular place where you might notice these kind of things come up especially is when you start putting processing on top of samples and you start adjusting those samples. Samples, the more samples that you have, it really is the more data that you can adjust, and a lot of different processing sounds you want to do, whether it comes down to sound occlusion, 3D, whether it comes to anything old style like putting a synth on something and making somebody sound voice sound like a vocoder. You still really do want as many samples as humanly possible, because then you get a more accurate adjustment. And without that here, it's a really sad day, because this is one of those games where it really could have helped a great deal. And especially when you realize just how many gigabytes of data that they saved by doing this. My personal opinion is it was not on purpose, and that it was a mistake, because the idea of them having this audio, I can guarantee you if their audio department was here listening to this, they would have fought tooth and nail to get it fixed if everybody was aware of the issue. I guess in a way you can sort of give them a kudo, because it still sounds good when you're running around and doing stuff and fighting. It's still fine in that way. And I know a lot of people who didn't notice it who don't really listen. Am I stuck right here? I think I might be stuck right here. Oh, there we go. I wanted to jump to another location. It's a little bit of time has passed, but I wanted to jump to this other location and show you some of the different looks graphically that we see in these parts. And again, water. You see that really green, murky nastiness that sort of reminds you of the bogs I talked about earlier with making steel. Wait, what do I hear? I think that's a boar. It is. Boars are crazy, angry creatures at all times. The biggest one on record for a wild boar is like 1,050 pounds. And they're able to actually run about 20 or 30 miles per hour in a straight run. It's gnarly. I don't have this on the hardest difficulty, so I can play while I'm recording all this kind of stuff. But it's absolutely nuts. Also, when you think about this kind of thing, there's currently, I think there's like 10 million wild boars in Europe. They were hunted towards extinction or complete extinction and were brought back. These things are wildly, unbelievably aggressive. To know just how aggressive a wild boar can be, a number of sites that you can go and check will list the 3 traits. This is something as a hunter you always want to know. What should I do around this bear? What do I do around these kind of animals to sort of keep me safe? With boars, listen, the sites will list 3 reasons why you can piss off a boar. If a boar is cornered, threatened, or ignored. You guessed it, it's just pissy. Also, they're known to spread hepatitis. So basically, Mother Nature said, I want a fat, pissy version of Tommy Lee from Motley Crue out here. Just steering boats with his penis and pissy and spreading diseases. They will gore you with their tusks. They are insanely evil creatures, so you got to watch out for them. It's funny, too, because they'll say, oh, yeah, boar will run away from you, and you have people who've seen them in the wild who are like, yeah, they will run away from you, but they will also, at times, just not, and they'll beat the shit out of you. And they actually tell you, If one drops you down, you should stay down and just let it do its thing, whatever that is, because a lot of times a boar will now realize that you're no longer a threat. You just put your eyes down, and it's like, it's a very difficult question or difficult thing to ask of a person who's just getting their ass kicked. It'd be like, yeah, man, just pretend like you're not getting your ass kicked. You're getting gored by tusks. Just pretend you're not getting gored. But the reason why I bring all this up is because there is a large hunting factor in the game as well, and you can definitely go around. You can get these different pelts. You can build all kinds of sort of things in the crafting system within the game, and I really do like hunting in this title. It is enjoyable. There's a fishing line that I unfortunately don't have yet in this version of the game, but it's definitely a lot of nature stuff that you can do. Yes, it looks a little funny with some kind of gigantic Viking just fishing into a bog, but it's still enjoyable for me. I'm just one of those kind of guys that I love my fishing games inside of video games. I always have. I like fishing games by themselves too, but ones that, you know, they combine it all even better. God, I love this mist. It's just so great because the developers, with issues with Valhalla, of course, many of them, but you start to see what they were trying to do environmentally, and I think they actually hit it, especially when you see this sort of mist that can creep up and move around. You also hear some slight alterations to the audio, because one of the things that occurs with mists and occurs with very heavy clouds, that kind of thing, are basically acoustic changes that occur, because the sound wave hits that particulate, and if the particulate is thick enough, will actually change the audio, and it can cause some really scary sounding things. I've been on the Pacific Northwest, out near the beach, and you get a super, super thick fog, and it can honestly confuse you on where sounds are coming from, not just because you can't see it, but because the way it affects the actual audio. I'm trying to see if I can hit that. Ooh, that's not a bad one. That's not a bad one right there. Oh shit. It's not. Is he coming back? Nope, he's just gonna run this. Oh, nope, he's gone. As I'm moving around here, another thing about the voice actors and just audio in particular. So you've got the sound issues. I think with the music, it sounded great. There was times where you can actually adjust this in the audio settings. You can make it play some of the audio sounds a little less if you choose to. I don't want to use the Raven. Let me get that back. And that's fine. But when it comes to the voices, I actually really thought Eivor was awesome. That actor nailed it, and I think that, yes, he had applied for a different job and didn't get that, as I said earlier, but I think both actual actors nailed it. I think they did a really good job, and they were talking in particular about their auditions, and there were 4 audio directors in the game, and trying to get into their spirit, get into the identity of these characters. For the actor who played Knut, obviously, it's not going to be as hard, right? Because that's where he's from. But as I said before, him throwing her number down and letting sort of listen to some of her stuff, she was actually involved in 2 or 3 other movies and TV shows. She's actually a TV show actress, was in a lot of those. And when she got the call, and as I said earlier, she's on her cell phone out on the deck screaming and yelling, worried her neighbors were gonna think she was a freak. As she's out there yelling and stuff, she just didn't think she was gonna get it. She just didn't even really know what it was, because they were sort of quiet on what they were offering and what this game was. I personally think she did a great job, and I've been impressed by the voices in this game through and through. There was Eivor's mother's voice. I dig her voice, man. When they're talking, when they're screaming, it sounds like they're really there. I'm gonna change to a different spot. Okay, this is one of the world quests. I know I'm near it. I just have to remember exactly where it is. But this is close to one of the world quests and world events. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Ubisoft's desire to do the world events in a slightly different way. And it actually caused a lot of complaints, but at the same time, it makes sense why they want to move this way. So the world events were going to be the events that were out and about, that weren't going to be connected all the time with events that were occurring on the quests, which, as I stated before, had you returning back and forth to the different areas that you sort of take over. So for the most part, Raventhorn, and your ability to do quests there, because it didn't make a lot of sense for this character to be tasked with things. So what they did with the world events is they did grab a couple ideas that they wanted out and about. And these world events aren't tracked like everything else. And this is one of the ones, whoops, I forgot. I thought I had swim on that horse in particular. Out here, this is one of the world events that you find, and they don't track the world events in the same way that they track the other kinds of actual quests. And this caused a lot of complaints from gamers. A lot of people were very confused. Even some magazine outlets doing interviews later on had asked about this and not really understanding what Ubisoft's exact idea was behind it. I think that they could have maybe informed you multiple times that this was a special thing and that they weren't going to be tracked as well, because I know a lot of people who played these would get a quest and they'd be like, I don't know where to go, and you would have to sort of figure that out, and many people weren't necessarily prepared for that. This is not altogether new, though. We did see these kind of situations pop up in some of the older Assassin's Creeds in some way. For instance, Syndicate, and I believe Unity also had the sort of detective games, if you want to call them that. Nevertheless, I do think Ubisoft probably could have informed people just a little bit more, maybe given them 1 or 2 events to have a tracking system with, and then say, you know, at this point on, we're not really showing you the track. I wanted to jump to this location so you can see some of the ironworks and the different ways that Ubisoft does to make sure that a game world, at least in some way, mimics their original intentions, their original ideas. And I really do enjoy, this is probably one of the first places where I was like, man, I dig this spot. You have all the different smelts, all the different kind of machinery on the side, or what we would loosely call machinery. Not a lot, it's more like bellows and a furnace. But you see all of the different burnables that they have, and the characters really moving around and starting to do more in the larger locations. This is something that's replicated in the bigger cities as well. All of it with a very dirty, nasty, sort of charcoaly feel to this location. It reminds you a little bit of one of the episodes of Firefly, where they go to that terrible place. One of those, they were manufacturing that weird mud, I believe, that had healing properties. And it was just such a, and they even called the natives mudders. And that's what this place feels. It's nasty, it's dirty, you can see it, it looks hot. This is a location that is done very well. This is a spot where it really works for me, and it feels like they were coming into their own with making some of these locations, the different furnaces and how they did it. And as I talked about earlier, especially when it all started, how different metals were being created. You see it in Norway, of course. You see it somewhat here, but a lot of times it wasn't just iron that was brought in, but you have that bog iron as well in some locations. Here, of course, because these guys do have actual places to create iron and places to bring it in, it won't be as pronounced. Gutting deer right on the side, just like gutting deer right next to some people yakking about some impending war. Also, the differences in the buildings here, far more utilitarian, far more fort-like, and you can feel that as you go into these towns. And it's very difficult for a developer to say, okay, we want to show 55 of these, you know, nasty aged towns. How do we do that? How do we make them look unique? And I would personally say they've done 2 things in particular. One, of course, they've just made them feel like there was no ability for them to use some kind of system to flatten all this out. So you get a lot of that verticality. Even small locations are vertical because people are just busy doing other stuff. You see the wood in place there to stop people from, you know, and the dirt from sliding. That was a way to gain traction in old towns where you had to put that down to stop people and stop the mud and the dirt from actually going away with the rainwater. But it's just a fantastic, nasty place, and it feels really emotive. Something that I think your own actual space that you go to, Ravensthorpe does that, but this place and a couple other cities really do nail it and feel real. They feel lived in. You do have a situation, of course, with a lot of debris here that doesn't necessarily seem like it would be left out, but as you start to look, you can also see that their trade is different. Something that a lot of people thought the Vikings were sitting there and it was always fields, and they were, of course, you know, creating barley and stuff like that. That is actually not correct. There were entire spans of time where they just really could not farm in the areas that they were in. And a lot of it was meat products. A lot of what they did was more around cows and just different cattle and that kind of raising for meat. And it actually took a very long time for them to figure out how to grow things. When they did, they actually did stellar in some places. In fact, there were a lot of people later on to be like, wow, these guys can grow shit in the most obtuse places. But it took a lot of time to get there. And this is cool. I like this synchro spot. Let's go up here. I dig this. I also like that if you look at the clouds and you look at the sky, it's really difficult to see just how many different colors there are. It's not that blue, it's that purple, right? Something about it, and that purple is washing over the entire landscape, and it gives it that feeling, that colored feeling. Like I said before, they wanted to make sure that every single region in the game had its own feel to it when it came to the color work, not only of the buildings, but also the flora, and to sort of figure out how they were going to do that. It's very cool looking. and we're going to do a dive off of this, which is sort of weird that there's, you know, just a bunch of hay laying around. But you know what? It's been since day one. That's just sort of their thing. What would an Assassin's Creed game be if you couldn't leap out and, you know, possibly kill some poor child playing around in the hay? Also, as I talked about the forts at the starting and the different forts here, the different setup that they have that very sawtooth look to all of their setups here, which you don't see in any of the Viking forts. They had a completely different way of doing it. They would usually use sharpened poles like we see in some places here, but they didn't have necessarily the exact design. And that really does work. It sort of sets all of these locations just a little bit off, a little bit different. And as you go in here and it's nighttime, you do actually see some characters lighting fires where there were none originally, which surprised me because I don't think I've seen that in some of the other Ubisoft games. I could be wrong, but I feel like that's something that's new to this, or it's some kind of a system that's looking at places and identifying, hey, this is a place that probably needs more lighting at night, where in fact I haven't seen a character doing it. It's usually when I come back. Here's the tannery. Something that a lot of people don't realize is a lot of people see the Vikings and they think very particular armors and stuff like that, and they aren't aware that a good deal of what they got, they were trading in a two-part system where they were trading with other tribes, other cultures. They were taking those pelts and those items and then trading themselves for something else. And you'll also find out that a great deal of the trade revolved around amber and the amber trade routes, which were huge at the time. Amber was considered incredibly unique. It was one of the most unique bits and materials and elements that people had seen ever, and it was a huge driver for trade for years. A lot of people were trading the things you would expect, the steel, the weapons, that kind of stuff. But when amber came into it, there is every indication that it took the world by storm, at least these guys and their world by storm. It was a massive deal for the longest period of time. And in fact, amber went away as a trade item for a great deal of time until there was sort of a recorrection of all of the cultures coming back and that ability for them to pay for particular items. And you see once again those amber trades actually open back up, those trade routes open back up. When the developers were talking about making cities and making the people and making the characters, they didn't know, and not a lot of people do know. In fact, we haven't got too much data on everything about the Vikings. It's one of the reasons why historians are always arguing about the Vikings. And though the Vikings here in this particular game now are sort of coming into other cities and doing those invasions and doing those attacks, there was a lot of discussion about what exactly were the Vikings? Were they traders? Were they just raiders? And the overall consensus seems to be that we're going a little bit away from them just being raiders, and they were actually, again, flexible, where they would trade, they would also raid, and they would turn right back around and trade whatever they had got in those raids fairly quickly, indicating that even in the next town, after they had raided another city, they would just come up and they would show up as traders without any kind of attacks at all. They would basically just, it's a little bit like a video game you might see in Skyrim, where you kill a character or you kill something or do a quest like 5 feet from you and then go trade it in. But in a weird way, they were like this. Okay, here we go. We've got, oh yeah, we've got a quest for him. But I found that interesting, and there's been such a disagreement on exactly what they did and how they did it. And Ubisoft had to choose very early on which kind of the Vikings they were going to go with. Were they going to go with an over-the-top Viking, where the game is mostly situated around raiding, and what they were going to do? And the idea to take this character and put him on the side of the larger issues that we see, which is like Ragnar's sons and some of the other characters, including Alfred the Great, it actually worked quite well. But they had to decide where they were going to fit. How was their Viking world going to be in this game? Was it going to mimic what we currently think about Vikings, or was it going to mimic some other element? Was it going to go a particular way or the other? And they sort of lodged their own history. They decided early on that this is what we're going to do, is we're going to create our own ideas around the Vikings and sort of say this is the way it is in our game, but in no way, shape, or form should it be exactly expected that they are whatever historians believe at this particular time. Speaking of resources and what they choose, obviously you can tell these are major characters. You see the one character that looks sort of doughy-faced, and those two are just drawn to the hill, right? Super extra time spent on them. over time, we're going to see some of this stuff go away where all the characters are going to look excellent. But hey, that's the way it is. A lot of people have asked me if I believe that they will switch from the Anvil engine to the Unreal 5 engine. And I get that everybody wants that. Unreal 5 actually has some of the stuttering that the Unreal engines have had in the past, and they're working on it. But by them admitting they're working on it, de facto, it's not what you say, it's what you don't say. They are indicating that they know that there are current issues with Unreal, and there very much are. So as we ride the horses here and you see a lot of this open area, as long as you're not pushing the system and you got your settings right, there's not a lot of stutter. You don't see the shader caching stutter or anything like that. We have seen problems with the Anvil engine in some particular places. But I got to tell you, especially when you start looking at how Nanite works versus the Anvil engine and what they're trying to do, I'm not 100% sure it would behoove them to move to Unreal. It will be interesting to see because we do know some other massive creators of open world games are. There's a particular issue with Nanite where the developers really are pushing the understanding to other people who are buying this engine, not buying it, I'm sorry, but using this engine. And that's that foliage doesn't get the same benefits that other items do because of the nanite system. It's not, I wouldn't call it a weakness, but the nanite system doesn't necessarily work incredibly well with foliage. Now that doesn't mean you can't have an amazing looking game. You can, but if you want to see the improvements that we're seeing in some of these videos where you have rocky shores that just look impressive and unbelievable, one of the reasons why we're seeing cityscapes and rocky shores versus a ton of forests, though we do see some forests for sure in the demos, is because nanite itself does have a couple issues there. And this is directly taken from some devs talking about this who actually work on the engine. And somebody had asked them, you know, is there going to be a fix? Is there going to be some improvements? And they're like, we'll always optimize, but nanite itself and some of the stuff in the Unreal Engine isn't necessarily able to be leveraged at this severe high rate that we're seeing that leveraging in some of the other engine demos. For example, like I said, cityscapes, mountains, that kind of thing. It's crazy when you look at the size of some of Ubisoft's games. I don't know if you guys are aware, Wildlands is 273 square kilometers. That's how big that world is. And Assassin's Creed Origins, I think, is somewhere around, I think it's 31 squared, and I think Valhalla's 38. Odyssey is 90. I believe it's 90, but that includes the oceans. And though you can obviously do a lot of stuff on the oceans, I don't think anybody would tell you that they are the same exact amount of environmental storytelling that you'll get when you're just sailing from open point to open point. But the games are becoming so large, it's just crazy to me. And it's not talking about the map mess, that's not talking about the icons, just the amount of real estate they're putting together. And the developers were talking about Anvil and how easy it was. They were showing some videos, which you can see in GDC. And they're drawing out different mountain ranges, they're drawing out different roads, and they're like, we can put a road here, and it works perfect. And then they have real people look over the top of anything another person has done and sort of are able to identify, and they can track that. So let's say I'm a developer, I like this area, but I want to draw a little circular road in this spot to do something crazy. I can do that. And then other developers can actually see that has actually been changed, and they can go and double check it, verify there's no issues, double check situations that they've put, maybe quests and quest markers. Because just like any game, this game does have a nav mesh, obviously, and people don't know that. That just means the system draws a navigation mesh over the world and says this is where enemies and NPCs and players can interact and go and move. In some spots you can't, for example, the trunk of a tree. But what can happen is you can end up having somebody go and use the tools to draw a bunch of stuff, and you can get some oddities there. And even though the game knows, hey, I'm not supposed to put a tree in the middle of a road, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense because there might be some places in the game world where you would want to put a tree in the middle of the road. For example, a place that's just really been taken back over by the forest. That would make perfect sense. That's where a person would come in and do those adjustments. I just really like this ride, man. I'm just sitting here as we're talking, and I'm like, damn, this ride and this location and the change of foliage as you move between regions and just the way everything feels. You know, there are some parts, oh my God, it's going to go, yep, I knew it. That's one of the things I've noticed is that you'll get those. And of course, this is what happens in real life. Anybody who knows and they've seen an animal in the center of the road, a lot of times the animal will panic, and these animals are going to get rolled. An animal will panic and go back in front of you. And I just knew that was going to happen here. So occasionally you see that. These are some really cool old forts. And you get that idea and that impression whenever you're traveling that this is a world that's seen multiple conquerings, multiple different times where things have gone good and bad for them. And the Vikings are this new bad, you could say, or at the very least, this new conqueror type. I believe this is a cutscene here. If it is, I want to describe. Yeah, it is. So this is one of the most poignant cutscenes in the game, at least to me, or the most pointed, as in something I remember for a long period of time. And the real reason is the emotion shown by the characters. So we talked about this automatic system that they can use to sort of generate cutscenes. But the thing about this king, man, it's like right there. He just looks at him. He sort of throws his eyes up in the corner. You can see that anger and that desire to not agree, and the ability for him to come forward and sort of lean into the discussion itself. And this is something that the developers have talked about in their GDC, where they can actually have multiple characters come in, and you can have this situation where a character who is talking will look not only at the character that has just talked, it actually has a counter. What it'll be like, it'll do a check and say, make sure to look at the character who just talked. But you can actually have all these reactions from other characters that are sort of automatically generated, and then they can go back and look and pare it down. And that's what you see behind him, the character shaking his head, looking up with his eyes. Guys, this is such a blast compared to some of these older games that we're so accustomed to, or games that I love, which are, your B games. You can see some of that technology there and see just the emotion in this moment. This is something that really reminds me of Red Dead 1, when we saw Red Dead 1, where John, right at the starting, goes up. I believe it's Butch that he's talking to, and there's this back and forth between those characters, and you see that emotion there, and that was, of course, handcrafted. But here, a lot of this is, yes, for sure handcrafted, but at the same time, also, much of this might have been originally sort of generically put together using their auto discussion system, and then they went in and maybe added and adjusted how everybody was going to talk. I really dig it, man. There's like that really quick nod of his head, that anger you can see. And again, they do, while they have the dubs and the subs, and they've stated, they can't do automatic stuff changed because of the dubs or subs. They have stated that, but they can go in and adjust it themselves, which I was talking about earlier, where perhaps anger doesn't make sense in another nation, another language. It doesn't make as much sense. So they go in and they adjust that for the different characters. But I just love the anger, the difference between the guy on the left who's soul tired. Look at that. You can literally see how tired he is of this situation. You can see him understanding the mistake his king made. And he's like, well, guess what? You do what you want to do. I'm going to back you up because you're my king. And the king just ignoring all that. You can see it. You can see that guy being tired prior to it cutting to this moment. I'll probably wrap it up now because I wasn't aware how long this had gone. As I move around, I had just leveled up and gone to different places. And this is one of those spots where the beauty of these games, especially when it's very easy to always be negative. It's certainly something that all of us can have a problem with and have an issue with. And you look at Assassin's Creed Valhalla, over $1 billion. And a lot of people have been like, well, was it microtransactions for that? Well, listen, Odyssey had microtransactions and so did Origins. But the fact is that Valhalla absolutely nailed it for them and shows a great deal of success for Ubisoft in this particular element, in this particular style of game. When you look at $60, right, what are you getting for $60? And especially now as it's been patched up, and sort of revisit this and walk around and look, I gotta say, it's mighty impressive when you look at something that's just this detailed as I'm walking through this, and at a playable frame rate, mind you, while recording. It's just really impressive. And despite my personal issues with the game and my enjoyment, I do have to look at this and say, when it comes to a lot of elements, when it comes to the work that they've done and their attempts at trying to deliver to you a unique character in a unique time frame, they did and have nailed that. And there's a lot that's going on in this game, and I can see why so many people loved it. It didn't really grab me. And you look at it, it's not something that has to do with the fiction that's on TV at this point, whether it be Vikings. Now we've got a new Vikings TV show. I'm going to pop to this new location here so you can see my boat. Last Kingdom, I think, is the other show with a character that I really absolutely adore when it comes to this time frame. But this is something that I haven't even shown you guys the other lands that you can go to. And there's this much stuff to cover when it comes to the back end. There's this many amazing things to look at. It's fairly indicative of where we are as gamers to still come out of this and be like, it's okay. It's really impressive to me in what all these companies can do. And looking into all of this information, everything on how they put the game together, even just how they were looking at HUD elements. And I've talked about this before, turning off the HUD elements, whether you leave this map up or not, or you turn it off. Some issues that Ubisoft has is that a lot of times when you turn off really what I would consider to be basic functions, from the HUD, you can actually lose some of the ability to interact with the game world, which is sad. I hope they continue to fix this. But these kind of situations where, they're very real, by the way, these were actual tactics that enemies would use, and having to get off the ship and take this guy out. I love this new weapon I found when I was trying to figure out another place to sort of close this out. I just really dig this weapon. But you have all of these characters, their abilities, their exploration. I can see why, whoops, I missed that special move. I can see why people were so happy. He poisoned me, damn. I can see why people were so happy with all of the different things that you can do into the game. And you really take into account then different players and how they're going to play. Whether it's fast travel, will they miss something? If they stealth because of the way the game and the path is set up, will they miss some bit and some element of exploration, some element of their environment? It's one of the reasons why when I review a game, I'm always really open to the fact that, hey, listen, if I say that it's lean on this side, you may not see that because you may have experienced it in a different way than I did. And I try to play very organic, as in if something catches my eye, then I'm going to investigate that moment. And I'm certainly going to try to hit everything. But at the same time, with just the massive size of these games, it makes a lot of sense for us to look at these and say, oh, you know what? There's a lot here, and the way somebody plays it can also impact their enjoyment. If they're not a fan of ship build or ship battle, then this might be fine for them. But if they are a fan of ship battle, something that they took out of Odyssey, then they might be unhappy with the changes that have occurred here and the world scale changing to really mimic that. It's changed in a different way, and some people may not like it, but it's very, very ingenious how they put a lot of this game together. Also, I gotta say, I'm stone cold pimping that skull flag and the Egyptian edges that I put on the ship. I think it's friggin' awesome. Also, when you hear some of the developers talk about these larger games, not just Ubisoft games, which have gotten very large when it comes to just their surface area, and I know some people have issues with that, and I get it, but the thing is the way that they do their games is going to be different than somebody else, and I know that some people will be like, man, we really need to pare down Ubisoft's games, but it's like, if this is working for them, we just sort of have to be like, let's get that game from somebody else. You know, that's just the way it's going to be. It's going to be unfortunate, but that's how it's going to turn out. But even putting down the mask, these elements that we see in these games versus someone else, and the work that they've done, it's really important, I think, as gamers, that we just sort of sit back and go, I get it. This might not be for me. It might not be. But there is a credible amount of work that has been put into these titles, and that's just phenomenal. Something we've seen, of course, in the other games that I've reviewed and other games that I've done these kind of videos for. For example, Witcher 3. Of course, we can all come across and say, you know, Witcher 3 has some spectacular work, but your success is never any kind of thing that you will for sure replicate. When we look at the success of Witcher 3, I think a lot of people went into Cyberpunk and were like, this is going to be ultimately successful because of Witcher 3. And it's like, no, that's in no way, shape, or form is that actually true. In many ways, in fact, there's a bigger change for them because they were going from a third-person fantasy role-playing game, which had 1 and 2, which weren't necessarily the greatest games in the world, to the third one they made, and they did a very good job on their DLC as well. It doesn't mean that Cyberpunk is going to rock. And each time these guys go out and they do their giant discovery tours and they try to make sure that the compositions of the landscape work for you as a player, their understanding of how berserkers work, of shields, how to put all of the different feelings, the customs that these characters have into a game, man, you come out of this and you're like, damn, that's actually pretty sweet. You know, they've done a lot of different work on these kind of things. They've even taken into account the differences between Thor and Odin, which is pretty damn impressive when you put it down like that and start to think about it. The technology when it comes to how they handle the Anvil system. And as we move into this, you guys got to realize 15 different studios worked on this. Ubisoft Montreal, one that's called Encia, I think, Ubisoft Sofia, Milan, Toronto, Gameloft, which is completely something I wasn't expecting to see. You've got Kryptonite Games, I think, and Blue Byte, all of these. And it also hit during the pandemic, during COVID, and they had to decide, do we have 4,000 people, or are we going to have them work remotely. How do we do this? It's just really stunning to see all these companies do it. And I can't wait to see other games from other systems, other companies, other devs, how they're going to handle all these kind of larger worlds and what everything is requiring of these people. And it's something that we see also with Ubisoft's small momentary mentions of Scalar, which is their new system. They're not really explaining everything that it's about, but it's the idea that you will have these sort of computations in the cloud. It's not cloud gaming. They've made sure that it's clear about that. And it's not streaming, but it's called Scalar. And it's something that they've talked about. And I really do believe in the future, we're going to most likely see what this is connected to Assassin's Creed Infinite. And it's sort of these separate bits, something we saw with Skull and Bones. You know, would you basically be doing an Assassin's Creed game and then leap into Skull and Bones and see a fully realized world that wasn't contained within just an Assassin's Creed game? We won't know until it's built, but regardless of all that, I'm impressed. I'm impressed with everything they put into it. It's still, is it fun? That's the big question. And for a lot of people, it's not. A lot of people, they weren't a fan of the kiting. They weren't a fan of all this stuff. But I can tell you, walking away from this, I'm mighty impressed by the work that they tried to do and tried to put into this, and a lot of the work that they did. And I've enjoyed doing this walking the walk. If you guys like this kind of stuff, please subscribe to the channel. It's nothing more than I just want to say thanks to the developers, you know who you are and where you work, who helped me make these videos. Let's begin with part 2 of Walking the Walk for Valhalla. We're going to talk about art, we're going to talk about gameplay, we're going to talk about AI, all the architecture that's built into making an open world game, as well as a lot of Viking history. Whoop, hit the wrong button. I want to talk about the fortress making that the Vikings actually did. While this isn't one of them, it is one of my favorite locations in the game for some odd reason, and it just reminded me of wanting to talk about this. Circular fortresses had moats that were over 15 feet wide. They had massive ramparts to them, and they were in a perfect circle with a north, east, south, and west gate so that they could get out at exactly or near exactly wherever they were being attacked. There was always a way for them to leave. It was a highly intelligent way of building these. And historians using all kinds of technology now have identified 5 or 6 of these sort of rim cathedrals, these rim castles. I hit the wrong button. Well, hey, you can see what the GPU is doing. We're in pretty good shape. All right, I didn't even know what button I had hit there. But you see these rim fortresses, they set it up, but they also used, in some way, sort of like a pie cut into fourths. They would also have barracks on each one of the corners as well. And there's some very good remnants of some of these bases where you could see exactly how they put these together with their ideas. Their ideas, of course, based around not only making sure that they're safe inside, but a mobility, the ability to be flexible in battle. There wasn't just this spot on top of a hill where they had to wait and everybody was attacking them. They were always very intelligent in where they built and what they took over. And the histories are filled with times where the Vikings just said, you know what, screw it, and left to fight another day. They were very open about that. You may be wondering, while playing open world games, why weather systems come and go so quickly, and so too do the day-night cycles. Most of the time, developers consistently have to truncate down the size of the game world. For instance, the landmass here for England, devs compressed it down to a little more than an hour or an hour and a half to walk across or go by boat. The day-night cycle is usually somewhat based on the same exact scale, meaning the weather changes in a compressed format and time frame as well as do the day and night. Why should or why does that matter? Variety and speed of travel. Those are calculated to make sure that the player sees a number of weathers and times of days that are in somewhat reminiscent or connected to the length of their trip. It's a sound system, actually. While mods are usually made to change timeframes in games, it's not a change that's frivolous to the developers, and it works to keep gamers immersed in a world. They get that consistent change, and it also lets missions that require a time of day or time of night to be easier to engage with by the gamer more quickly without always having to pass time. Many times it's there so that a person can go from one quest to another, and when a time-specific quest is there, it's just available to them. Scale's important, and when the devs do this, and they did their own discovery tour and looked out and saw these sheer scale locations, they realized that it wasn't just the climbing and the leaping and the verticality of the environments that was gonna matter. It was also making sure that the world and the people themselves looked and acted like they were accustomed to those locations. This also resulted in them making sure that the characters understood pathing, dress in some locations, as well as characterization that we see in some of the later places. And the developers just wanted to replicate that and replicate the sense of scale that a natural person living here would see. And these people living in these small inlets would look to the right or to the left, and instantly it was a sheer wall next to them, a sheer wall of just utter size. And that feeling of being small next to nature is something that is replicated quite well in Valhalla, and really is just a natural extension of the location itself and the people who live there. While climbing here, I do want to point out something. So AC's original creative director, while creating the game, stated that he was sorry for the towers in games, that he felt in some way that he had caused that mechanic. And I get it, AC was one of the first to popularize that kind of movement, I think, but I can't say that makes it anything that you should really apologize for. The mechanic itself is actually fine. Utilizing it in different ways is how games augment and dynamically adjust as players become familiar with something. The complaint is the continued same use that you saw in these games. It didn't really switch it up until these last couple titles. Traveling upwards to find a goal is really as old as time, from myths to old stories to board. What the hell? I wasn't expecting that. I actually saw somebody get hit by an elk one time. It broke his arm, his leg, and his pelvis, I believe. You know, you're talking 1,200 pounds of angry steer. This is obviously AI gone wrong here. Oh, right, AI is being chased, I see. So this is the chase paradigm that they've sort of built into the AI itself. Anyway, what I was saying about climbing is that from old myths to old stories to board games to games with kids climbing monkey bars, I'm going to try to get this guy. Unfogging that world and, you know, sort of giving characters more motivation for what they see is not bad. However, there are really hundreds of other ways to merge that into the elements of the game and into the game itself. Perhaps the bird, maybe another point of contention in the games, could be used from the top of the tower, some other controlled mechanism. Who knows? So I'm going to jump forward here a bit so you guys can see this medicine woman character. The Vikings had no actual overall religious group that led them. They did have people such as Valka, who's a Volva, who's basically a mystic woman. They did have those characters, but they actually had their own very personal way of dealing with religion, which was also one of the most difficult parts for people when they wanted to convert them to Christianity. Because the Vikings were like, hey, if it works, we'll go with that, but it didn't mean they would stop something else. And this caused issues for years. Somebody would be like, hey man, we want to go ahead and Christian you. They'd see it worked out in some battle somewhere, and they're like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do that. But then they would still be doing sacrifices of animals. They would still be doing their normal expected stuff, and a lot of difficulty involved getting them to convert. It was just really difficult. One of the best stories involves a Viking lord who was asked to convert. He was interested, but asked, well, what about my ancestors? Are they in heaven? And the priest said, no, they didn't believe, so they're not there. The Lord, without missing a beat, basically said, I would rather live with my ancestors around me and not anger them than be without them. And there was a lot of attempts, things like saying that the hammer was just a upside down cross and that you were just wearing the cross wrong. Any kind of similarities were used to try to meet them and put them together. Now, the Volva's hut here and any building in the game are all checked and hand placed from and with items from the designers. If you look, they also have small environmental storytelling devices in them. They'll outfit the homes with specialty items that you won't really see anywhere else. This lodges that location into your memory as special, even aside from the character who you meet there. Then they also make sure that the locations look like they have a shared heritage as well, shared pieces of art or designs. So sometimes a game may have a place where a tribal sign is in one place and then half of that sign is in another location where a higher level character resides, or someone who might have more or less knowledge of that writing in particular or art in particular. You see that in Far Cry Primal as well, as a really good piece to show you environmental storytelling done just by a little simple bit of art design. To continue this discussion about spirituality just for a second, ancestral worship, like I said, was incredibly important to the Vikings. Ubisoft made use of that in the story and some choices as well, and I applaud them for it. They had a full belief that these ancestors were just unruly, and you would have to continually make sure to bring them up. You would have to tell them in stories, tell about their deeds, or they would come out and attack you. So this ancestral worship is then overlaid on top of their own group of gods, and then when you have Christianity also put into there, or as well as Islam, you have these different religions coming together, and you have a very difficult time because instead of somebody who's dogmatically against something, the Vikings were in a way dogmatically flexible, which sounds like it can't be possible, but there you have it. I like this character. I love the knotted and knitted different rolls of cord that she has, as well as what looks like some rummy tile cubes on the side of her face as well. Drink up, sucker. So I jumped forward to one of the main attacks, and I'm going to fight this main guy that you sort of go through Norway looking for prior to your move out of the location. When it comes to this fight, I wanted to bring up the mocapping. So a lot of difficulty was handled, I would say, in a fairly smart way with the mocapping for this game. They ended up having some professionals who sort of knew what they were doing with weapons, and they have them doing the mocapping that you would expect, that kind of stuff. They did a pretty good job, from what I understand, explaining to people what they were seeing, because one of the difficulties with mocapping that you hear a lot of people have is the inability for them to sort of identify with the location or the situation that's actually occurring. And it seemed to me that a lot of times when you would hear about mocap, you would sort of see this video where a guy was just standing by himself swinging a sword, and it didn't make a lot of sense. It didn't have a lot of impact. It didn't have a lot of feel. From what I understand, by the way that Ubisoft handled this one in particular, if not also Odyssey, was a bit more hands-on and a little bit more feedback to the characters on what they are seeing, what they're doing. That really is something that's vital for the players who are jumping in and taking on these characters, so that they can feel a part of whatever it is that's going to be up on a digital display sometime later for a person to play. And I like the rune stones that come out of him when he does his specials, when you hit him. It's so awesome. Watch this. I think he'll throw me. Oh, no. Yeah. I think at some point he actually... at one point he actually throws an enemy at me, or can throw enemies. I think it's this guy. Oh, nope. Getting his axes back. Double-handed, double-bladed axes were not very well known in Viking traditions. They definitely did one-handed axes, and they did have double-bladed, or sorry, they did have double-handed axes at one time. But the typical double-bladed axe is not something that they were actually using. And I don't think it's shown up in any historical data. I think it just is one of those things where somebody said, hey man, 2 axes are better than 1. They certainly did have blades on the end of some axes, like a sort of a pull kind of thing where they could pull an enemy's off. Oh my God, he's huge. Oh, I forgot this. Oh man, I totally forgot this part. I love the idea that that's what you're fighting right now, is a dude who's basically a berserker leader with all of his items. Oh, and yes, I forgot this. He tries to kill him, doesn't he? And that didn't work. That dude's screwed. But you see this guy with a bunch of the bear talons on his chest, and my assumption is that that is what all of this is supposed to indicate. If somebody's watching and they're like, oh no, it was actually for sure a thing when they mentioned it in the narrative, I might have missed that. This guy's actually throwing human bodies at me. That's a... Ooh, dodge. He just... Ow, man. There we go. Bye. Right, I'm just going to plop him right in the dick. You're out. So if you'll bear with me here, I'm going to slow this down a little bit and talk you through some of the stuff that I noticed in the fight. Like, for example, that first rune that appears above his head actually means thorn or troll. It sort of means both things in the Viking runic script, but I love how that shows up whenever he does that particular attack. You sort of get that idea of him as this particular berserker character. Also, Eivor uses a particular cant on the bow, which is sort of holding it at a slightly different degree so that you can see more of whatever you're aiming at versus the actual heft of the bow, which is one of the things that can actually happen. When you're shooting a bow, if you're holding it particularly straight, it will actually be a little bit harder to see. So a lot of people actually hold it at this cant. Oh, I missed him. I didn't even see that. Also, when you see, as I switch positions and do the push-off speed, that move doesn't require a particular foot to be on the ground, and I love how it pivots when he does. I just dig this spin itself. Their animation isn't perfect, but if you look, you can see he actually lifts his lead foot to speed up on a spin like you would see an ice skater do. Then right before impact, he touches down, uses that rear leg to keep the rotation going instead of planting it as if he was going to stab or push a character. Speaking of ice skating, I love that the enemy just holds Eivor up, and you, instead of seeing him standing ramrod straight, he realistically pulls Eivor closer to him to keep that weight between his feet, his ankles, and Eivor. Here's the kicker, though. If you've ever headbutted somebody, the first thing you learn is to never hit them in the face or forehead. I love that he also slightly adjusts his head when he headbutts Eivor. Just and twist. Awesome. Say what you will about Ubisoft's animations, but a lot of this stuff is fairly well done, like when he lands on his shoulders and then rolls up and over just like a body uncoils, because that is actually what a human body does. Is if you get that roll, unless you tightly bound yourself into the roll, you actually will push out. That's the body's desire to sort of straighten back out. The only really time you'll ever see somebody curve in towards themselves is a severe amount of brain damage. There's various different ways you can see what type of brain damage somebody has, the bending of the wrists or the curving up into the fetal position depending on what part of their brain has been damaged. This Snow, the way everybody looks, and I get it that he's going the other way, it looks odd, and then you see him running for these double axes. I just think it's really well done. Now, again, we're slowing it down so you do see those animation shifts and the blending and how everything happens, but there's a lot of storytelling that they are trying to get in here. And as I stated, I'm not in love with Valhalla, but I certainly don't have a particular issue with these kind of things. Even the idea of them celebrating behind and around them during this ritual battle, which is something that they fully believed in. They had no issues whatsoever. Also, his double swipe, that first swipe at the initial arrow and then the double swipe to also sweep it to the side is so well done. And that double jump. I love that when I roll out, you can actually see just that roll into the duck, quick twist, protect the bow, protect the arrow to make sure that the arrow doesn't get smashed, and then hit him with that axe. Of course, as we all know, one hit with the double axe will probably kill you, but whatever. Last thing I want to point out is that Ubisoft has made sure that the emitters on all of the weapons actually follow the weapon if there's blood on it. So if a character hits another character and blood comes off, you'll actually see that blood trail along as the weapon moves or chambers into another move. So it's actually correct in the way a lot of that blood flows and moves around. Last but not least, watch when the axe hits the ground. He actually has to reverse his wrist and move the axe so that the back end faces away from him so he can swing it accurately and correctly in regards to his body and his wrists. That's just really good. There's no cheating that's involved in that particular moment, other than a little bit of that slide where he loosens his grip and you see the axe slide down his hand more towards the head. There's a little bit of a cheating there that wouldn't necessarily be possible with the weight and how it was done, but still, hey, like I said, we can complain about a lot of things, but there's some cool stuff going on there. Oh, and yes, the proverbial vision quest for each character that you kill. And this is, of course, when Odin shows up, missing that eye. And your connection to Odin sort of becomes a thing, becomes more well-known for each of these that go off. Also with Odin, I do like that he's such a mysterious figure. You see the ravens, you see him showing up, but he's always mysterious. He's one of those characters that you're like, is he on my side? Is he not on my side? Does he know me? Does he not know me? Obviously he knows me, but what exactly is happening? And each one of these characters decrying their death, indicating that you're the cause of all the problems, is pretty good foreshadowing.
All for this? The coward father is empty sacrifice. Heed the price of our war, kissed. The harvest of 3 dead generations, all their names unknown. It all means nothing. No. My plan will not be forgotten! I fought as I did, as hard as I did, to survive, for I know what awaits us in the end. Only darkness.
So I wanted to fast forward us to these guys leaving and why I found this just such a cool choice. So Sigurd and you're come together, you've decided that your own king has given up his reign to another king who's taken over. And Sigurd, of course, it's his father. He's like, I want to go. I don't want to be here. I want to start out in a new world. And you get to choose if you take the resources from this current camp with you into England or if you go with just no connections whatsoever. And I think this was a perfect choice that maybe doesn't feel as impactful as people wanted, but is actually it pays off exactly how I was hoping. And that's that you can take the stuff with you and you can take that money and worsen that situation with this current leader here, or you can leave it and pretty much every single time choose to leave it. I like the idea that Sigurd brings up, and he's like, I don't want to befoul the ordeal, the overall feeling between my father and myself more than it already is, because he's seen that. Sigurd has actually seen a ton of war. He is older than you, and he did save you, but he wants to get away from this. He doesn't have an issue with raiding and that kind of stuff, but that internal civil war and the internal back and forth of leadership absolutely bothers that character. And this is something that when you look at characters, who's written well and who's not in video games, Ken Levine's talked talked about it, many characters have talked about it, but player-driven replayable narratives, that ability to sort of do a loop. Here it's not a loop, so I don't want to push it that far, but I want to say that it's the beginning of the way choices are made. Some of these choices may seem huge, and they may be something where you're like, oh, this will be a big deal, and maybe it's not. But when you take into account the way the Vikings lived, you don't have to make it a big deal. It's just a deal. And so he says, you know, I don't want this to be an assault on my father. It's time of renewal. That is something that they actually believed in. For example, as I already brought up, if a fortress or location was untenable, it was something that they couldn't hold on to, they would leave to renew themselves, to sort of refresh and get out of the constant dregs, the constant terror that they were always in and that they faced quite well. But at times they weren't stupid, they knew. And so the idea of getting these people together that wants to go, that wants to take the chance with you guys is awesome. Now, this also does sort of give you the first dichotomy of how leadership is going to go. It's very difficult to not notice that it's you three with Dag over on the side. And in fact, the husband and wife aren't necessarily as in love as you might assume. This is something that happens with Vikings in particular. They would leave to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years and go to another location. You find out that he's been gone for a while. He comes back and the wife isn't necessarily as much into him returning as you would assume, which is foreshadowing for some stuff that comes up later. It's not a mistake that they threw that in there, and you can see that pyramid of leadership, which, if you understand how leadership works, is not actually as solid as most people think. Usually 3 leaders is a disaster. It's just like kids in a playground. It usually falls apart at some point, especially if it's 3 people and not 3 groups. Sometimes 3 groups is actually something that you want. Here, it's not. I want to talk to you guys about something technical. So see this easy little swing there? Boom. You would think that was easy to do, wouldn't you? It isn't. One of the things that the developers have talked about for Assassin's Creed is their ability to use the engine itself, the Anvil engine, to draw on the game world. If they want to put a stream in the game, they can do so very easily. Anybody can do this. That's what I think is awesome. So that means an artist can do it. The lead can sit down and do it. Anybody can do it. And they can sort of draw out locations, and the Anvil engine will understand how to handle the geometry to a basic level and many other parts of the game world, including rivers and where water is going to flow into them. Zip lines are the worst. Zip lines, it is hilarious to see how difficult it is to get a zip line to work. They have to make sure that a zip line is not too angled or the character's animations won't work. It has to be up enough so that the actual physicality makes sense and that the character's inertia and movement forward makes sense. And there is an entire video about making the lands of, I believe it was Odyssey, maybe it was Origins, that you can watch on GDC. I love the GDC videos, and they talk about nothing more than the difficulty of zip lines. And I don't mean the entire talk about is about that. I mean that it is that difficult, that just by a simple change, you can make things not work at all, whether somebody puts a tree in front of a zip line or they put it up too high. And I just think that that's awesome. It's one of those parts that we all joke about zip lines all the time. We do. We joke about zip lines. We joke about synchro and how that happens on the tall locations. We talk about all these things. And if you just watch a GDC, I bet you will take a good, fresh perspective, especially on some of the stuff that you think is quite easy, that is a disaster. There was a Twitch conversation where a dev said, tell some secrets that no one knows. And by the end of the tweet list, by the end of all these people commenting, the one thing that no one understood was how hard doors are. Doors are insanely difficult to get to work right and make sure that people can get through them and that things don't go dramatically wrong. So this, of course, is that last moment with father and son coming together, and the son saying, listen, I'm going to go ahead and just leave, and them talking about victories, who's more victorious. And this shows Sigurd's ability to sort of lead on his own, stand on his own 2 feet, and also the ability for him to understand that by standing on his own 2 feet, it doesn't mean he has to stand on the shoulders of his father. His father can stay behind. And his father also agrees with that by telling Eivor, you know, you watch over him, be sort of his faith, be sort of the character that helps him in the difficult times, which is a major sticking point in this story. Not sticking point in a bad way, but is a sticky part of the story that I think actually holds true pretty much all the way throughout it. And finally, we're leaving. We're going to jump in here. People have got their oars ready. They've got all of their shields out. And now we're going to go and find a home for these characters. And this is actually where I think this talk gets even more interesting, because not only where they chose to live, but how they went about it is actually very, very cool. And taking Dag with you is one of those moments where I know a lot of gamers we talked, and they were like, why would you take that shipbird with you? It's like, listen, man, these guys were fighters. They were fighters who saw death very often. And so the idea that two people may argue is not what it is in the real world that we're in now. And the idea that two people could argue, could fight over stuff and still defend each other the very next day and fight it out the day after that and then be friends the very next day and drink together is not unknown. And it's something that you see even in militaries now, where you hear about that in military groups. You know, the army, two friends in the army, but they also get in fist fights, or they also, you know, they're constantly at each other's throats, but when shit matters, you know, they're on it. And yeah, I'm going to complain about this just like I did in Origins. I just think that the ships move a little too fast. Obviously, this is completely unrealistic for how fast it's moving, and I get that. But at the same time, I think we don't need to see that. That looks like it's popping wheelies. There's something about those ships. And the moment it shows up in Origins, I remember I was moving around in Origins going like, man, it's going to be hard because this is going to bother me all the time. So here now we jump into the Animus. And here now we jump out of the Animus. The Animus that starts up in this first section has you walking around with characters in the modern day trying to figure out the connection with Eivor. I find this overall, I don't have any issues with the Animus, but I don't think I can tell you anything about the Animus that you didn't already know. It does connect some bits of history, but I don't think it's that interesting to show. This is a great introduction to the location. They had to decide, how is it that they're going to separate this land from the original land? How are they going to make it look different so that gamers really did feel such a feeling of being explorer? It can't just be snow, right? It has to be everything. What does the sun look like here, where it looks like it might be in a completely different place and location, latitude, longitude, that type of thing? How long is the day here versus somewhere else this particular time frame? All that kind of stuff is going to matter in how they play out England and how they go about creating it. They also had to identify the palettes of color that I talked about earlier that helps the gamer in differentiating the locations via a couple factors, including that color as well as geography and ecology. I do want to point out that while these guys are just hauling ass up the river, Viking boats were able to travel at incredible speeds depending on the type, and while sails did come at a later time, their speed on water was factored into every single decision that they made. How they attacked, who they attacked, and which part that they were going to actually stop at. I do want to point out also the water foam in these locations and time frames. Foam is one of the most difficult things to get right, and back when Origins was being made and Odyssey was being pre-made and decided upon, the devs were trying to hit it just right to get the foam to not only be at the edge of the water, but coil up and around rocks and along the bottoms of the boats. They finally settled on an excellent middle ground that looks good, but isn't really computationally hugely expensive. I think it looks great, although it's only really showed up in these last 3 titles. Now this part, as they travel up the river, mimics the way the Vikings really went. All the ships wouldn't actually land at one particular spot. Many times they'd enter a river and then split up or stop in different places. We see Sigurd and Eivor continue on while Sigurd's wife goes to a different spot. This is a great presentation for the gamer in understanding the differences of these characters, and also giving you a place to look back and say, I'm going to go to those spots. Where the Vikings came from, remember, 75% forest, so much of their myths consistently involved its dangers, and then coming here, seeing these differences, the changes of the geography, the sloping hills. To a Viking, this place had to have looked like it was begging to be brought to heel. Historians have also suggested it's possible that the World Tree was actually more of a symbolic map of the Vikings' own land, with a massive forest separating most of the people into tribes, sort of like the World Tree branches in the different realms. And then coming here and seeing all these interactions, and while some people have traveled here before, all of these new characters, what they see and what they notice is hilarious. Just listen to some of this. I believe Ubisoft does a very good job in the interactions, especially here at first, where he's like, what are they doing? And Eivor calls it ritual drowning. If that's not perfect, I mean, that is what it is. That's exactly what it is. But the words that are spoken, the way he says that is, he didn't say baptism first, right? He didn't say this, ritual drowning. It's just you're just like, wow, because these guys also had a ton of different myths around water and the Leviathans and all that kind of stuff. So it's just very cool. And then going past all these locations and sort of identifying in their own head if any of these are worth stopping at. And once they do find one, sort of going like, okay, this is what we're going to do. But they decide to get settled first. And you can see this lived-in world where the characters are going about their day, but you also see these guys skirting beside them. Now, understanding this, a horse can travel a good deal of distance at that won't kill them. They can travel a good deal of distance across land, especially if they have a light rider and not a lot of equipment or weaponry. What you see, though, is these guys' ability to use boats and travel and be mobile from spot to spot at such an insane track. Some of the ways that they moved blew historians away when they were reading some of the mysteries of how these guys went from, location to location, how they took down different abbeys at one location, and were just very soon seen somewhere else. And even the tracking of some of the heroes themselves, where those heroes were moving, and their ability to travel quickly in the boat. One of the reasons why a lot of people were always questioning, how is it that these Vikings show up and they do so well with such small groups of people? One thing to remember is that the largest groups of Vikings ever, like the heathen army, has been estimated in the low, not tens of thousands, but within the high thousands, and also as low as 1,000. But even if you say high, that is still less people than sometimes some of the bigger armies would be able to field in massive battles in one battle, not just their entire army. That is nuts. The reason why they did so well is because these guys were hardened in a way that a lot of other, at this time, nations were not doing, which is where they would have to conscript people, or they would have their militias that we certainly do see. But for the Vikings, it was what they were doing all the time. I love this water here. It's very cool. Ubisoft has been open about how they generate water, using a number of FFT frequencies to generate waves on a surface, lower for larger waves and higher for smaller waves. Assassin's Creed 3 had only 2 layers of noise. Assassin's Creed Black Flag had 3, but one of those didn't impact the ships itself. And in these further games, they use 4, with all of them impacting the physics. They then combine that with 4 types and colors of water, identifying slow-moving water, where organic materials would sit and maybe have a tendency to turn water green or brackish. They have brown for dirt and sediment. And for water away from shores, they actually use checks for transparency and depth and reflection to get that nice blue. Then they run a dampening filter along all the edges of the water so that near up on edges or on shores, it actually reduces those waves. It's crazy to think that what we see as water of various different colors has so much calculation going on.
Back to the boat! Should be closed. 5 more surprises.
With that information already logged, they do have to identify what plants might be organically breaking down in waters and how they were going to put all these plants in. They've chosen 80 different plants and flowering types to use in Valhalla, but they're also very strict on identifying that to the Vikings and anyone who really followed the more heathen ways, plants, animals are going to matter more. And you actually see that in the storytelling right here when you look up on that hill. You start to see the trees as characters, and this is something that the developer wanted to show, but it's also something that does mimic their lifestyle, which is nature and the overall belief that they had. Like the tree on the hill, visible and noted when you destroy the chain on that guard post, it's a subtle bit of storytelling, like a secret character in the crowd of a time travel movie, where only by going back and researching and rewatching do you notice that they're even there. It elevates nature subconsciously to the level that the Vikings themselves felt that it was. Each level a little bit more and more. While the developers always know that gamers are not Vikings, they do want them to feel like the character that they're seeing the world through feels and realizes that they're in a realistic setting. Perspective adjustments are a huge thing in video games. Sometimes a statue is larger than it should be, or a window's wider, or the steps in Skyrim wick around the entirety of a mountain as a perfect, long experience to soak into the gamer's brain through the experiences and visions of the character. They also wanted nature to be a character here, which we see later when you go to the main village, and the central symbol in the center of the village is a tree. Milestones like that then become cornerstones to feeling real, to feeling alive. We already know that the real world exists. Developers don't care about that. They want to try to make you believe in the fantasy world, or at the very least that the characters that you are playing do. And this part here is really excellent direction for a game, this cutscene. Speaking of characters, you listen to Eivor and Sigurd and Dag argue back and forth like an old book club. You see Sigurd and Dag, their relationship, that of a commander and really an unquestioning second in command, but now in somewhat way replaced by Eivor, the player, who's sort of in the middle, which is where all the action is in narrative. But Dag commenting, and then Eivor, and then Sigurd backing up Dag's comment with a slight teasing of Eivor. You understand all their relationships in a short moment contained within the cutscene as you enter the main spot. You don't need an exposition dump to understand the stresses they're in by this very short moment. That short moment of stealth, seeing the tree and nature mattering so much, the different world around you, traveling on the ships, and then the discussion. It all works perfectly together as a bit of a pyramid of narrative. And perhaps you've noticed this, but maybe you haven't. It's this period of quiet right now. You could have killed those guards on the back guard station, but you didn't need to. The game slowly doles out all these options, including here, when you're ready to land, not instantly attack, but the game's setting you up with the understanding already that you may or may not do different things to succeed, which later actually becomes the Alliance map's overall mechanisms for taking over, but currently it's just organically rolled out here in gameplay bit by bit. And doing that also helps gamers feel familiar with what the title's gonna ask of them, and it gives them experience to use when the mechanism is later introduced in the game. I like this spot here. It's just one of the better cutscenes in the game. This is one of the more interesting fights at the starting of the game. You've, of course, like I said, you pass through Norway, you're in England, you see these characters. One of the things the developers had talked about, one of the big difficulties they had, was making sure that the Saxons, the bandits, as well as the more militant groups, that they felt different than the Vikings, because for a lot of different groups, they can sort of mend into one another. As I said, they like frank weapons. They also ended up buying shields and armor or bits of supplies from other nationalities, and they put all this together to make themselves Vikings. They had no issue stealing and using the items if they were important. So the developers had a bit of difficulty trying to understand exactly how they were going to separate it. And to do so, what they did was a lot of helmet work, a lot of head work, and a lot of differences when it comes to how the characters actually look without the helmets. So some of the overall art styles and maybe less tattooing and stuff like that, which I thought was a really good idea. Now, we jump into combat here. As I said, combat is going to be hard to do as I'm playing. Combat is a little different in this game than it has been in the others. Again, you have those truncated moments. I do feel that they're noticeable. Ooh, got a little bit of poison there. I do believe that they're noticeable, and they do detract a bit from what I personally wanted in the Vikings game. I was sort of hoping for something a bit more dramatic, a bit more weighty. You still do have some really good, cool hits like that. That blood there was awesome. Ooh, I might actually stop this and slow it down so we can talk about combat for a second. Vikings didn't have a defined role when it came to military units, like nations that they may have met on the battlefield. Most of their warriors were trained on a variety of weapons, and their overall functions of the warriors directly reflected the needs of the entire unit based on the core tenet mobility. And that's one of the reasons why you don't hear about spearmen Vikings or swordmen Vikings as much. They were trained and retrained to use all of the weapons, which is what set them apart from the enemies they faced, who may have infantry or cavalry or archers, all of those discrete groups. When discussing animation, while I do have my issues, I do really like that you can see the hit stops on enemies for a lot of the weapons here. The axes and the maces in particular have that gap animation. It's a bit of a stutter that shows impact, like it's catching on a character's body. While a game like, let's say, Vermintide does have that full stop, which makes that combat feel incredibly impactful in first person, a third-person game is much more difficult to do that within, especially if you're taking into account enemies, if they have the same rules, and are they going to play out in the same ways when it comes to all of the blended animations. There's a lot to take into account there that you may not think of right away. And that's why a lot of games use that sort of motion set where one character will interact with another one, and almost instantly they'll combine into one animation. If you watch closely on the right, you can see that arrow go between the enemy's hand and head. And then this guy just tosses this spear at me. I love that. And that is, again, something that they've added with this system. Slow motion is great. It shows you what really occurred versus what you think, and that's a distinction everybody should know. The special moves the enemies do here are much more defined in slow motion. For example, that blast of sand, that guy threw into the opponent's eyes, and then my arrow hit his leg in mid-swing, but the blood splatter comes out the front of the character due to the arrow going all the way through, and his arm whips up. Or my amazing double shot on my own guy. Sorry about that, bro. Boom, bop. My favorite moment, though, is right here. I just saw this when I was doing this. The swing right over the top of her head. And this guy up here swinging that sling. The sling is a weapon that was used by many cultures back then. And that ability for it to trace all this. These are such a step above all the prior games we had played in last generations, to actually see all of this occurring at any one time at this high of fidelity. Slow motion is a valuable tool. If you get a chance, throw a game in slow motion after you've recorded a little bit of it during a battle and see. You'll probably be very surprised by the variety. This is certainly something you can also do during these kind of help assist moves as well as carrying moves, to just see how the developers have decided to work the animations in any particular action group. Or the bow, for instance. Origins, it didn't have larger groups that were raiding in the same way that you see in Valhalla. Odyssey did have some battles. It made sense in many ways because that was within the Peloponnesian War. But Valhalla is a land of just full-blown war many times. And your group is always fully raiding with Vikings. You're always moving out and about. You're always grabbing stuff. You're always having these sectioned off moments where you can see larger and larger scales of enemies, something that we also see in the assault form in this game. And the idea that they wanted to make sure that they did their best in reflecting that, but at the same time understood that there were some very particular difficulties they were going to run into, especially because this title was built for all consoles, not just the next generation, but the prior generation, as well as PCs with different performance profiles and how they were going to go about this.
Honored family, friends, welcome.
Ravensthorpe. They didn't actually know, or at least they said they didn't know consciously, that there was a real Ravensthorpe location that was in the same landmass. It was something that they just came up on their own with. Ravensthorpe, the real one, has indications of a Roman settlement as well as Scandinavians later on, indicating that most likely they took over that larger settlement after the Romans left. But the fact that Ravensthorpe becomes a thing in this game and they didn't actually know about it is just interesting synchronicity when it comes to game development and what you see sometimes with game development. Also, when looking at the village and how Ravensthorpe is set up as a village, it's actually very well done because you are able to walk through the village, you're able to outfit it, decorate it in a way that you really haven't been able to do in some other games. It's not necessarily that you're just upgrading locations, and the game does a very good job continually refreshing those updates. For example, as you're updating the main locations in Ravensthorpe, you also get extensions, including the DLC extensions. When the game senses that you have DLC, they add in a whole new settlement location and tell you about them and tell you that you might want to go see them. It does this cool way of merging everything together when you're in mid-story. You don't have to be in the extended end part of the story, as we've seen in other games. So as you go and you start talking to the characters and you decide to name this location Ravensthorpe, it's just really one of those moments where you're like, wow, that is synchronicity. And it certainly can happen. If somebody's looking at a map of America, they're going to see names repeated multiple times. And if they're studying it to create a Viking world, but they're now studying England and Norway, those kind of places, it does make sense that these names will sometimes just sort of come to the forefront and become a thing. And I like that the characters are like, where are we? And she's all, an unnamed copse of trees. And they're just like, we can't have it unnamed this entire time. And then again, showing the strength of Eivor as a character, where he basically gives his idea of what he wants to name it, and they agree. Once again, showing that the Vikings, that was the way their leadership was done. If they weren't in the middle of battle, if they weren't absolutely under high-stress situations, pretty much people within the room did get to have a say, unless you were one of the very low caste or a slave. I just love this trinity of overall leadership that they have at the starting, and understanding, especially Sigmund understanding that, or Sigurd understanding that he could easily just leave his wife behind and have her run everything without any real problems overall, though a couple do creep in here. The leaders themselves were the ones, just like I said at the starting of this, like Captain Kirk. They were jumping inside of a space shuttle and going down to the ground and doing things that a lot of us would be like, should the leader lead from the front or lead from the back? And different nations, of course, handled this differently. But with the Vikings, these guys are certainly at the forefront.
Good work, my dear. And what else?
So speaking about Viking leaders, I don't know if people know this, but Harald Bluetooth, who is one of the greatest leaders from the Vikings, that's actually how Bluetooth Wireless got its name. The technology would unite devices just like he united tribes. And the logo for Bluetooth is actually the initial HB in Bindrune. By the way, Ragnar Lothbrok, that is Shaggy Breeches, is pretty much what he was known for. Back then, naming different nations, different cultures named their people differently. The Vikings certainly did have more of a over-the-top, more of a warrior kind of stance for their naming. Other nations at the time had things like Harold the Bald or Harold the Fat, where they would actually name their leaders after their biggest weaknesses. And that shows that difference in cultures that you see. And right there is the bell, not only intoned at different times for religious ceremonies, but it could actually be used to alert the people nearby. As I said, a law, which was that people would come and protect a tribe, protect a village, if they could hear the village being attacked, if they could hear bells, if they could hear specific things. And we see that also replicated with the Viking horn. Viking horns can be heard from a great deal of distance away. And if you don't realize that, this is something that the Canary Islands actually have. They have an ancient whistling language, and that was used in the 1400s and up and could be heard miles and miles away. And it was a whistling language that be able to transmit information between villages and for very great distances. Horn is sort of a replication of that. It doesn't only stir the blood, but it can inform everybody there that, hey, the Vikings have arrived, but also anybody nearby who heard that could take any orders that they wanted. There isn't really any indication that they were using it for during battles where they would maybe have different signs that they would use, different sounds that they would use. It never really seems to indicate that kind of stuff, but certainly when it comes to it's time to attack or return to the boat, you actually notice that is used in this game. If you listen very closely, while you're in the middle of battles, you actually can hear the secondary horn indicating that all of the men are back at your boat. Exploring here in the normal places, you also go to Asgard, and the game does end up in North America. Why is this? So Ubisoft, especially when the ideas are just blossoming out, they take information and ideas from everybody involved. And this is from the CEO of Ubisoft. The developer lead was with them while they were pitching the idea. They discussed history and some of the first Europeans visiting North America and wondered how that could be, or could it be, worked into the game. The main issue is that Valhalla was set 150 years prior to that happening. The team felt that that location and change-up could be fitting of this story and fit within the Assassins and the Templars' ideals and how the groups affected history. They were always one step ahead of history anyway. The gameplay cycle completely changes there, with Eivor having to change up his strategies, his tactics in a way that there's a massive difference from the prior parts of the game, but really elevated the ending story beats in a way that not having it would have probably not done. A frequent complaint is that open world games have a dearth of in-game change. Developers sort of sit on a horde of cyclic game design and mechanics loops, and the worry of changing things outpaces any real desire to change. Like it or not, I think this is one of the best parts of how Valhalla works. Personalization wasn't unknown to the Vikings either. Throughout all their history, when making swords or weapons or shields, they would chisel out this outline of a rune or a picture that they wanted to put on an item into a piece of wood. They'd leave that center empty, then put the metal down on it and hammer hot metal into that outline to etch the blade or roughly meld them. They also believed runes were additive, so if you had two runes on the same blade, technically it was twice as powerful. And their weapons weren't that big either, about 3.5 feet for their swords, which were follered, which is where you take that center groove of steel out. It barely weakens the metal, but it actually ends up making a much lighter weapon. I expected them to be larger for whatever reason, probably just because of fantasy shows. One of the things you find out about the Vikings is that their metals for a long time weren't the best, which is one of the reasons why they were so big on taking Franks, going there, finding weapons from them. What they did was they used a lot of bog metal or bog iron. So bog iron, it's surprisingly from mineral-rich water, not from mining of some sort. And you can see this iron-bearing groundwater basically typically emerges at a spring and sometimes into some area that has a bit of stagnant water. The chemicals over the top of the water left like an oily sheen from the presence of bacteria mixing in and breaking down some of these materials. And the ability for them to go in and they chop off the peat on top, they chop off this kind of algae moss, and underneath it you'll find little globules, little tiny specks of metal that you can actually end up pulling out, hammering together to remove as many of the impurities as you want and create your weapons with it. And while this wasn't unknown with other nationalities, other cultures, it was still a really intriguing way for them to outfit themselves in places where possibly there wasn't the ability to put together any really good, high-quality weapons.
Is there a sea scald among you?
In the early days of the feud between Kjotve the Crude and the Ravenclad, there was a mad berserker called Kiar Robo. Kiar had pledged his battle fury to no king or jarl, and would give his oath.
Back to bog iron. And this is one of the reasons why a lot of people believe that the idea of dwarves, the ideas of some people working in darkened locations, hammering this out, is actually because to hammer out the impurities, what would happen is they would have a very dark location, and the smith was able to look at the iron and identify how many of the impurities they had removed by the color of the iron at any particular temperature. And so the smith was able to look and pull this out, and that's how a lot of these myths of people working in these darkened areas and then over the years become sort of, these are dwarves working in the caves, but really it most likely is simply a replication of what was happening in the back end of all this and how they were getting the impurities from the bog iron, hammering it down, twisting it to do a layered kind of impurity drop where you twist it, you merge these metals together, hammer out the impurities, check the color of the blade, and that's how you end up getting a lot of Viking weapons. Vikings also believed in a thing called sword killing, which is where if a person ended up dying, many times they would have swords buried with them, but the Vikings would actually break or bend the swords, indicating that the person was dead, and also stopping looting. It was a very smart way of stopping looting. I love the mixture here. You see the spears, you see all the different hammers. It's definitely crazy, which is something that we see in a lot of the Assassin's Creed. This is going to be hard to fight while I'm talking, but I love the flail, by the way. Flail was not necessarily an incredibly used weapon. You would see more along the lines of maces. Flails were quite difficult and had a very high propensity of injuring the wielder. But to me, I just really like the weapons. It reminds me a bit of Neo 2 and the Kurosagama. It's just a good weapon to use. I'm going to take this guy. Oh, yep, head's gone. I love it. The mixing in the way that this game handles combat and in the open areas, I think is probably the best that right now Ubisoft can do with the AI that they have. A lot of people look at the AI in these games and say, oh, you know, there's an issue here. It doesn't look very good here. This isn't really the greatest way of handling it here. That's completely a very good point, and it's something that the devs who work on this absolutely know. You can find a bunch of GDC events. I missed that guy. A bunch of GDC events where they discuss how they go about deciding how AI is handled in battles versus handled in exploration, something I've talked about a little bit earlier about the CPU cycles. They're well aware of it, and I think as we see games going to these new... I'm having a hard time with this guy. There we go. It's one of the things when I come back to do these walking the walks, I like to come back fresh, and that also indicates that my timing is just absolutely tremendously bad. Tremendously bad. There we go. Wow, that was terrible. Grab your own weapon and stab you to death with it. Especially in this game when I was watching those kind of things and seeing all these stabbing deaths and how characters... Let me take this guy down. How characters interacted with weapons. There's a question that comes up a lot of times in modern military, which is like, why does a Navy SEAL, if they're out of bullets, why don't they just pick up an AK-47? And while in life and death circumstances at times you will, it's actually funny to find out from a lot of military people that be like, listen, man, you know, I know my weapon, and I know what the problems are, and I know how it shoots, and I know everything. Grabbing an enemy's weapon, you're not 100% assured of how it's going to work. And I sort of liked that idea. Here, Vikings didn't have a problem. Grab that sword, stab somebody through the body with it, and then walk off. Or take it. When it comes to pillaging, which is what we're going to do now, looking around and pillaging, one of the biggest complaints towards Valhalla is that these can feel quite samey. The same complaint that we saw with synchronization that we get in the original games where you had to synchro to be able to see everything. I can't remember how to get up here, but it's on fire, so it's probably going to burn me. And I get that, and I completely understand it. I do think that not only... Oh, that was a bad idea. There we go. I'm on fire. Don't worry about me. Quick fire, by the way, too. I am just wearing a bunch of fur, so I guess I would light on fire quickly. But the idea that they want to go and change some of this stuff with a next-gen version, it interests me. We'll have to see how they handle it. I do think that they can. I think that there's some spaces here that they could fix up. We know... Fire again! There we go. We do know that this kind of stuff is things that Ubisoft is working on and trying to figure out. Other companies as well. It's not like this didn't happen in Ghost of Tsushima and other games where you'd have weird combat looks. And that game's combat I find incredibly intriguing. I love this design on this. You got, of course, the metal rivets there holding that wood together. Bracing it is actually quite a strong door there. I don't know what's going on. I thought I was that guy for a second. The way the game's camera worked sort of confused me. I do like the designs of all these places. Like I said, the only thing I've noticed is that there's a lot of times there's too much debris where things can look a little weird, look a little bit broken up, and not as realistic as I would like. Here we go. Let's open this up. So the main complaint people had was, oh, yeah, big chest. We know what's going to happen. We're going to open the chest. We're going to get building supplies, and we're going to go on. And I get it. I certainly do, especially as you continue to play this game. There's a lot of times where you're like, okay, I already know what's happening. There's one more chest. My actual complaint for this game goes towards the hiding of those locations. And in a lot of places, guys, you'll do your Odin scent, as I call it, but your Odin sense. And you will notice that one of the places you want to go to is, unfortunately, I forgot I could bar that. Unfortunately.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's under construction. Whoops! I don't want a second one. Yeah, I'll wait for the glade before I pick whether to get a grove or a camp. There might be something really useful here for a camp. Harpies resolve low. Well then, I guess it's time to burn some wood. Am I close to anything? Right, I need 7 amber. I will get that from the trade routes, hopefully. I need another round of trades, though. Here, we can sell... I don't want to sell clay all that much, but it's the only option right now. And stone. So this map has... right, this map has stone. I got some stone down here already. Let's sell stone, then. Okay. That's fine. That's 2 amber. Okay, now we can cut through. Alright, go, go, go. And they can both work on that. There's the carpenter. So we want the beavers in here. I don't think I have enough to work everything all at once. Not really. We can move this guy though. Okay, and make some planks. I can make some tools as well. Sure, can't go wrong with tools. Okay, tools and planks. 30. Alright, come on. Open the grove. 2 tools, 2 beavers. Okay, I'll take that, thanks. The settlement specializes in incense production. Gain +1 to human resolve for every 75 produced. Not worth it. Gain an insect every time woodcutters cut down a tree. Gain 10 packs of provisions for every 10 villagers in town. This is kind of nice, but 3 insects are just too good to ignore. Like, way too good to ignore. I'm obviously getting that. What was this again? Oh yeah, trade routes. 24 resolve for beavers, okay. Rebuild a salvaged... rebuild or salvage a destroyed building. So I could wait with this and see if this first grove has any building we can rebuild or salvage. And then pick the order, based on that. Okay, no need for planks in here. Let's get a few more provisions real quick. Not with beavers. Mostly for trading. Here, okay, all beavers are assigned to relevant stuff. There you go. Come on, chop that shit faster. We don't have all day. There we go, so what do we have here? Oh yeah, I remember this. Okay, this is fine. We'll do it right away. Mushrooms, food stockpiles, crystallized dough. Okay, yeah, I'm taking that. Now we can move elsewhere. Okay, might as well chop all this to make some more space for buildings. So, any big resources in here? No, but there's coal, there's fertile soil, there's stone. This is nice. Alright, I think I'll pick the grove then. Yeah, I'll pick the grove. And build it right away, actually. Right here. Okay, there you go. And the trader will arrive in 10 seconds. And medium abandoned cache. I could grab this right away. Maybe not yet. Although... well, the amber will be too slow, probably. By the time they get the amber, the trader will likely leave. Also, I need some more shelter. My bad. And I should upgrade the heart too. So let's just put up some barrels really quick. That's 4. Just get 8 right away. I'll need 8 soon enough. Oh yeah, place actual farm fields. Alright. So I would like beavers in here actually. I probably don't need them in the carpenter all that much, but they are nice in here, especially when I'm making tools. I need more beavers, clearly. I suppose I don't need 9 of them working the woodcutter scams. Probably not anymore, no. And when I need more population, just in general. Everyone is doing something. Yeah, everyone is busy. Grab that human. We got shit to build. 40% done. Okay, any useful trade routes? Planks, perhaps? Okay, well, sure. Planks. Yeah, low on fuel. Yeah, that's maybe not good. Really low on fuel. Okay, that's a bit of a problem. Oh, I've been burning wood. Ah, crap. Okay, that's definitely bad. I need more people working on this shit. Okay, carpenter can wait. Chop more wood. I need the mine, like, immediately. Let's get that mine. Can I afford it? I need some bricks to get the mine. Okay, hold on. This is a bit of an awkward placement because it's partially blocked. I guess I'll grab this one. But I need to hurry up with that. I need to get 4 bricks. I guess I might just have to make them myself. Okay, we'll make them ourselves, that's fine. Hopefully that won't be too slow. The storm is coming. This might be a bit of a problem. Okay, everyone is busy with something. Okay. Let's chop all this shit. I can get 2 mines eventually. But fuel might be a problem temporarily. When is the next trader coming? In 6 minutes? Oh yeah, delivered some orders. Minus 50 hostility. It won't help me that much, but okay. So there's no building I can rebuild. I suppose I can probably do the resolve later. Complete 10 trade routes, okay. Traders will arrive quicker, +1 crystal growth. Okay, let's do trade and industry, that's fine. What's the next building? Smokehouse, scribe, smithy, herb garden. Right, so I could get herb garden. Now, I am getting roots for free, but I could focus on the mushrooms with the herb garden up here. That's probably a good idea. Okay, let's go with that, and we'll build it right away. And use it just for mushrooms and nothing else. Just disable those right away. I need more population. I still haven't finished the houses. Everyone is busy, damn it. Okay, these people... I don't need to finish the bricks, so they are still busy. Remove them from the makeshift post. Go build the houses. Fast. Yeah, I do have... Okay, one more woodcutter in here. Come on, build all that shit. They got a lot of work to do, wow. Yeah, I know. We got the bricks, so we can remove these people for now, it's fine. Anything else I can work with the herb garden? No, that's right, they are just waiting to get the fields. Don't worry, you'll get it. Are we done with that cauldron? Because that's 2 pops that are busy at the moment. They just need to carry that shit back to the storage. Okay, a new grove, or glade rather. Another coal deposit, stone, herb node, okay. We're going this way now. Actually, yeah, hold on. I kinda want to clear out this forest because I can't build a mine otherwise. Like, it's actually blocked. Like, the broccoli patch is blocking it. And then the trees are blocking it. Okay, we got the houses. I still need, yeah, the decorations. They are queued up. Here, they're going up. Done. Okay. And then I need, yeah, 4 more decorations. Let's just get that real quick. That just uses some planks. Alright, the grove got its farm fields, and now I need it for the herb garden. Humans should be working in here. So that will give me a good supply of herbs. Still making some planks. I think 30 planks will be enough for now, to be honest, and I don't want to use up that much wood. I could make some tools, but I got 16. I got 18 at the moment, so that's not needed either. Yeah, let's just leave carpenter empty for now. Work on all the other stuff. Yeah, I know. Wait, hold on. Do they start living at 0 or at -1? I think at 0, right? Because it's red. But anyone know for sure? Will they live at 0 or does it have to be in actual negative? Okay, sell some insects. Oh yeah, you're probably right. The icon here means they will leave. Fair enough. Okay, I do have only 35 wood. I don't want them to leave, but that's 40 wood per minute. I guess it's not the end of the world if like one leaves. I can use some oil. Not even sure where I got it from. Okay, let's just burn some oil. It's fine. Yeah, I think I would rather keep my biscuits for later. I only got 14, and it will only get harder as hostility goes up. I suppose I could also remove the woodcutters, but I kind of need my wood. Wait, are you guys done here? Yeah, okay, so now I can actually build a mine here once I'm ready. Speaking of which, yeah, it's done. So, yeah, beavers. I don't have enough beavers, damn it. But let's have 2 beavers in here in the mine. Get that coal going. That should help. And So, Blight Post. Maybe not yet. A brickyard. I need a brickyard. So let's build a brickyard. The hearth. Yeah, we're building the decorations, it's fine. The trader is here. Okay, stop burning. Okay, there's the trader. All farms can plant mushrooms. Okay. Well, I don't think I need that. I'm getting herbs from the herb garden, so that's probably fine. All buildings cost 33% less, but every discovered resource node has -5 fewer charges. Reputation from Resolve grows +5% faster for every 2 villagers with that need for leisure fulfilled. None of these are super useful, to be honest. I don't like -5 fewer charges, to be honest. Because these small patches don't have a lot of charges to begin with. So I don't like that too much. Yeah, like the nest only has 15, so -5 charges is kind of bad for that. I can't reroll anymore because I used my reroll. I guess I'll just get mushroom seedlings then. Not that I need it, but I mean, I guess it works for every like farm type building. We can get both herbs and mushrooms here now, I guess that's fine. So... Okay, I want the beavers, that's 2 beavers for both. Humans have better resolve in general for me right now, so we'll go with the left option. New orders. I need to like work harder on these orders. Open 3 caches. Unlock the artisan, but solve 3 dangerous glade events, that's a lot. And I am producing tools. How many caches do I know right now? I know this one. A small one over here. I would need 1 more. So that's 2 already. I'm sure we'll find one somewhere around here. Okay, yeah, let's go with that then. So open 3 caches. And for the last order, have at least 16 humans. I probably won't have 16 humans. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I can just leave this open for now. But I don't think I'll get 16 humans. I only got 7 at the moment. It seems pretty unlikely. Okay, all beavers in the mine. So hopefully I won't have any problems with fuel anymore. Not sure if 1 coal mine will be enough, but hopefully. Anything else from the trader? What can I buy here? Pottery production, movement for woodcutters. Gain 3 incense for every 10 rods produced. Wait. Does road delivery line count? Anyone know? What the heck? Would I actually get incense like for free from road delivery line? Or do you have to like physically gather it somewhere? Okay, it won't. Oh, I suppose that would be a little bit too strong, probably. Alright. I don't think I would be able to afford that anyway. Probably not. Okay, fine. I need to sacrifice 1 more oil at the hearth. Okay. I got 0 left, don't I? Yeah, I got 0 left. I can buy some. Okay, let's buy some oil from him, cause yeah, I need to sacrifice more oil. Sure, let's buy that. It's actually fairly cheap. I can get like 20. Okay, it's pretty cheap. Just burn it for a second. There, so that's 20 out of 20. Now I just need the coal. I already have the coal. And we can burn it during the actual storm. Not literally right now. I have 0 right now anyway. Am I using coal for anything else? No. Oh yeah, actually... No, I'm not. This is not built yet. Okay, just double checking. There's the brickyard. So, let's see now. I do have some stone, so let's get some bricks. I should probably build the stone cutter's camp. There's a lot of stone I can gather. Yeah, that's kind of a no-brainer. The heart is upgraded. Now I'll need a service building. Oh yeah, and I need more shelter too. It looks a little bit empty around it actually. One more. 2 more. Another glade. A small encampment and more fertile soil. Nice. 10 amber, 2 new pops. Let's get the amber actually. Maybe clear this out. Get some more space. And I could build a herb garden here again. I think 1 grove will be enough. I should actually focus the grove on the crystallized dough and the resin, yeah, because the mushrooms got enabled automatically. I don't want mushrooms. I mean, I want mushrooms, but not from this building. I need literally 1 more amber. Let's check trade routes. Yeah, here. Sell 7 insects. Go with that. I'm not selling tools, thank you very much. So that will finish 1 order. I'm actually going a little bit slow here. Definitely slower than average. And the stone cutter's camp. Okay. That'll do. Move some woodcutters camps. Where else can we go? So I could do 1 more dangerous glade, maybe. Not literally right now, but just in general. Let's just chop some of this stuff. Yeah, move you as well. Maybe remove some of this forest close to my main camp. That'll do. There's 1 more glade down here. Ready to deliver. So that's 2 more pops and biscuits. Okay, yeah, 30 biscuits. I'll keep that disabled for everyone. Yeah, keep that disabled, and I will only enable it when I really need it. So, not right now. Definitely not right now. Oh yeah, and the small encampment. Need to send some people here. Get the amber. There's the trader. Plantation, don't really need it anymore. All buildings have storage capacity increased. Trader will arrive quicker. +1 to herb production. Now that would be nice, but I would need a lot of amber. Yeah. I don't think I can afford to buy 15 from him. Can I? Well, probably not. I would have to sell a lot of stuff. Yeah, kind of tempting. Okay, yeah, let's just do it. Okay, and buy +1 to herb production. That will help the herb garden here. Next building. A bakery, leather worker, tool shop, alchemist hut. Hey, how's my food anyway? Right, I do have the cookhouse already, so I can do that. I need flour. I don't think I can produce it from anything right now. No, I cannot. So not any of this. I have tools covered already. Well, I can't reroll unless I wait. I don't really need the bakery. I mean, sure, I can use it, but I don't need it. So that's pie and the biscuits. I got the cookhouse already. Well, pie is only good for humans here. What about services? Okay, I would actually reroll this. I might wait to get 5 amber to reroll. A leather worker? Did I get any? No, I didn't get anything better for fabric. So I guess I could go with the leather worker. And water skins might be useful later. Luxury goods might be useful. I don't have anything that needs them, but the last 2 orders might. Oh, am I getting... No, I'm not getting a spark though from Rain Collector. Alright, let's do that real quick. I'm just going to wait a little. 5 amber is not much. Might be better just reroll that. We are getting 10 amber from this encampment, so I'm actually going to reroll that. Oh, I didn't click investigate, my bad. Okay, move the woodcutter's camp. Anything else easy? We can go this way.
Hello. Good day to you. Good day. Good evening. Good afternoon. Good morning. Hello. How are you?
I don't need roots, so just herbs and mushrooms. Sell some insects, sure. Well, okay, I have a lot of crystallized gold, I can sell some of it. Or sell mushrooms, that's fine. What about tools? I don't need tools. I think it's time to open some of these caches.
40 enemy damage. Come on, man.
All my folks are doing something. Nobody is free.
Hit all this damage.
Only coal stockpile, 40.
Trap damage.
Yeah, so
100% trap damage.
Is anyone doing anything unnecessary right
Get
now?
rid of it. 50% trap damage. 75% trap damage.
I'll just wait for them.
Get rid of this one.
They'll be free.
Where's that other one? 100%. Get rid of it. Look, 50. Is there one higher?
Alright, that's fine.
This one, 50. What did it get? Now we got 50% trap damage. Get rid of it.
How many plants do I have left? Okay, not a lot.
All of the good runs. Just doing the shit, you know. Basically, oh, nice one. Harrow the Heart. How are you? Yeah, I'm doing fine, thank you.
Let's just get the fish.
Just thinking, do a couple runs of this and
Pottery, insects.
then
I think I'll just get amber.
Then see.
Yeah, let's just get Amber.
See what after that. Maybe two
So that's 10
two
goals.
runs or one or two.
Leaving me with 8, and I can then get the other one right away. Leaving me with 2. Now I don't need to burn.
Have you been
As in, I don't need to.
have you been continuing with your quest?
These rewards are nice. It's
How's it going on King Arthur?
Fuel burns longer, and all fuel recipes are 25% faster. So I want all of that shit. Let's just burn some coal. I definitely want all of that shit. Oh yeah, well now we can maybe check out this blade.
The Kang and me. The Kang and me.
See if there's anything useful there. How about the blight pulse? Yeah, I should get the blight pulse.
What does it say? 25. That one's okay. 40 enemy health damage. It's terrible, man. Just maybe just gonna look 45. So there's no point.
That is actually definitely.
Just saving all of these epic, mythic, legendaries for you know, when they become more powerful,
One person from the storm.
then use them. Otherwise, just wasting it. Can just jump into one right now and
Okay, done.
totally lose. So
Burning now. Is
there's
it
no
done?
point.
Yes, it's done. From that, get our reward. So that's +1 to coal production.
I played this game called
and all fuel
what was it
recipes
called?
are
Rogue Legacy 2. I really didn't like
faster.
that game.
The 24 is all for beavers. That might have to wait.
Some annoying things in that game. There was this
Every group has additional villagers.
sort of perk you could get
The
called
settlement
vegan.
specializes in cosmetics.
So it says
The cost of
you take
sacrifice
damage when you eat
resources
meat.
is
So
reduced by
basically
5%
sometimes you can just
for every inpatient
be in a
support
position
unit.
where you
That's
cannot
interesting.
avoid it and you'll die.
I wouldn't mind more
How can you
villagers.
die from
Let's
eating?
get more villagers.
You know, that's not what a vegan is. And if they're making the game, why didn't they put?
Okay, two more
They could have made the food vegetarian, you know, in the game, but they chose to make the food as meat. So
and more tools.
now they're punishing you for
Resources for tools.
using what they've provided. You know what I mean? Look here, it's mana,
Yes.
something like mana or whatever, right? How can they say if you take mana you're going to die? Does it make sense?
For later.
That game I didn't like
Now
it.
what I could use is at least
Right.
one service beacon.
See, Admiral Baru, he made it look so easy. He was flying through that game like it was nothing.
Monastery.
Finished it so quick.
Right, so religion and the legend.
So yeah, that was it, Rogue Legacy. And then this game, saw our friend Werglier playing it. You know, he introduced. I didn't actually watch his playthrough of
Creation is good.
what's it called, Eterna Noctis. I haven't actually watched it, but I did see him playing it a few times.
Religion not as much.
It looks really difficult. And then saw him play this the night it came out, so I thought I'd just get it straight away. So if I had to compare this with another new roguelite similar to this, it would be Rogue Legacy 2, but just didn't like it. Didn't like that
The
game.
chance for bonus production yields is increased by 15%. That's pretty nice. Okay,
So I might as well play it, you know, I'll just play it a little bit, then one time I'll stop playing it and that'll be the end of it.
or scrolls, or preferably gold. And I also need more bricks to even build it to begin with.
But
So let's try to get more bricks.
this game, like, also I always, when I'm playing it, I often think about Hades and why Hades is so much fun.
There are a few more.
You know, like this game here, you're going from room to room or chamber to chamber. You know, it just kind of takes a long time. It takes a while, you know, like how I'm doing it anyway. Why am I killing these? I kill any enemy that will shoot or any enemy that will jump, because you know, if you're gonna do the gambling with the devil, then, oh, he's not the devil, sorry, yeah, excuse me, with death, gambling with death, then there's some conditions where you can't even see, like the whole screen will be darkened, right? And also the condition will be that you'll die on one hit. So that's why you see these guys shooting everywhere. I like to keep them, kill them. And then there's other conditions where it will say you should kill 10, 5, 10 or 15 enemies. So then I leave the melee enemies. Not this guy though, because he can just jump and kill you from off screen. Right, and then what else about this game? So you see how slow you move, everything. It's like when you start, super weak. So there's so many little decisions you gotta make. Since you can die with one hit, I haven't bothered with increasing, what do you call it, the health, because yeah, you can die with one hit. And then the other option is defense. So I think, yeah, I did get some defense. There's a few ranks of defense there, just to help soak up the damage. Because look, this seed, for example, it says 45% enemy damage. So then I guess you're just taking, your defense is gonna lessen the effect of the seed that you're in. So obviously you gotta deal with that. And then there's other things like status ailment. You can increase your status ailment, but you're not even guaranteed to get a weapon with status ailment. So it's a waste of points if you ask me. Right, unless you've obviously you finished everything else, then get the status element. Then there's another thing, run speed. That's not essential to victory. Other stuff is like chaos. Get more chaos, and chaos is tied to the kind of rewards you'll get. So if you're not having a lot of chaos, you're even wasting your own time by trying to upgrade damage or whatever first. You're just wasting time, because no matter what, you need the chaos so that you can get the dark matter, so that you can upgrade your character. So that's what they've done. They just stripped everything away and then made all these different resources. Oh yeah, there's the weapons. The weapons, how does that work? So you want to upgrade the weapons, then you need gold or adamite. And this thing, you only get adamite after you've created something like level 17 of chaos, and right now I'm on level 8. So if you were playing for 40 minutes and you were less than that, then you're not guaranteed to get a drop of gold. There's no chance. No, it's a default chance, whatever that is, which is really gonna be low. See, look, this guy jumped, so he could have killed me. If I just left him alive and talked to death, and then he says you die with one hit, so it's like you're gonna waste your own time. That's the wrong place. So what else is there? So yeah, you need the gold for the weapons, and you have to go in the order. It tells you can't do anything, like, so some of the upgrades are crap. And then that's another thing, it's to unlock, you start with the sword, then basically you can unlock this weapon here, the scythe. I don't like this weapon. Like, you seen when you attack, you end up going downwards and you can't control where you're going, kind of thing. So I just don't like it. So if I'd known, I would have just unlocked the gun. So every run you're only gonna find gun and sword, and that would be it. So, but now because I unlocked the scythe, I'm less likely to get a gun, you see. less likely to get a gun, less likely to get a decent sword because you unlocked something that you don't like. And that's the same with Rogue Legacy. There's about so many what do you call them, classes, if you want to call it, and the more classes you're unlocking, the harder it is for you to get something that's actually good. So it's like on that game, the more stuff there you go, look, you can't see anything. That's what I was talking about. Sometimes it won't even look. See, you can't even see the map. Oh, you can't see the map, but there's another one where you could have this one, you can't see the map, and then you can also have one where you can't, your visibility is limited, and another one where you're gonna die with one hit. So anyway, then what else is there? Rogue Legacy, what was I saying? About unlocking stuff. Then it makes the game harder because now you've got the same amount of resources but too many things. I don't know how Baru well, he just played it so hard. He always can just destroy any video game. So yeah, now it's done. Easy. And that's the thing about this game, it says something about its, how did they describe it on the store page? They say heart pounding something like that, you know. But if you try and play it like fast, jumping around and everything, you're just gonna die really quickly. So you know, so yeah, bearing that in mind, that's why I went with the gun. You just shoot them from, there's a chance that you're gonna get a decent gun, you know. Like obviously when you play it, you'll see that some guns are better than others, right? So if you get a decent one, well, for bosses, that's the thing. Some are good for bosses, some are good for okay, whatever. Some are good for boss, some is good for you get what I'm saying. Look, this one is it's not allowing me to cheese. So, and the damage is quite low. Anyway, at least we didn't die. So what was it? Yeah, you might get a decent enough gun, and maybe, oh yeah, but even that you have to unlock everything. Chance to get, look what it did. All my resources is gone into one weapon because it's gonna take forever to. You might as well just try it. It will take too long to try and do multiple things, so you have to decide, do you want the sword, do you want the scythe, or do you want the gun, and then stick with it. So that's what I've done. I picked the gun, but even still doesn't mean I'm not going to use what does it say, something about poison, or increase poison. Status ailment doesn't even, I haven't put any points in status ailment, so it's gonna be just low damage anyway. So, oh yeah, what else? What else about this game? Oh yeah, this is it. See it going down, and you can't. So it makes it harder for you to avoid damage. And then what else did I get? That second life thing, that was a waste, because if once you've died, it says you'll get 40% health, but at that point you're not At that point you're not really able to get your health back for the most part. It's really difficult to get your health back, so I think I would have preferred just to I would have liked to upgrade something else other than that second life thing. And the dash, that's another thing. So you only get one dash, and the jump, 2 jumps is not much. It doesn't feel like much in this game. But trying to get a second dash, you never, it's so rare. But like Hades, the way they did Hades was just really cool. Like, that's what I was saying about the rooms. Here you're going backwards and forwards and zooming here, zooming over there. Hades, once you've cleared the room, you've cleared it, and you never look back. This game, you're going backwards all the time. So it just, how's it? Whatever they said on the store page, they say, what did they say? High octane or something. Not really. You can't do anything. Hades, definitely you can, the more skill you've got, if you've got skill, then you're gonna definitely do definitely feel like you know, you can do something, but not so much in this, I don't think. Obviously you can remember try and learn the patterns, the enemy pattern, but even still, it's just kind of numbers. Might as well just soak the damage up as best as you can, and shoot them from far away if I have to. But yeah, Hades is much more fun. Just probably buy it because it's not this 2D kind of presentation.
Oh yeah, blind post, right. How bad is it? Oh, it's really high. Whoops, my bad. Here.
The thing's a bit boring, man, like the progression. It just feels like they just reduced the numbers of everything, and then they said, when you've done your run, here you go, you've got your resources, go and increase the numbers, and that's it. Slightly more damage, slightly more health. They're just increasing the values, and that's about it. Doesn't feel like nothing major. Not like this more twirly stuff.
Okay, I'm actually going to grab this. Even if I burn anything again, I have a lot of gold. A shorter storm will definitely help.
See, that's another thing. So that guy jumped and did me damage. It's crap, man. This man. You see that little guy? I'm attacking him in the air. He's attacking me, and he's doing a lot more damage than me. So that move's just crap. That whole weapon's rubbish, man. And the sword, it's good because it will stun, and I guess it can help you with your movement if you throw it and all that stuff. But the gun, because you can shoot them, if you get the right gun, then you're laughing. Literally, you'll be laughing. You know, and that's the only thing. So I'm just waiting to grind out the gun and just get. Oh yeah, that's what I did. I spent a lot of points on luck. It doesn't tell you anyway what any of the stuff actually really. What does luck affect? It doesn't say. Look how they done the skill tree. I mean, it's not skill tree. What is it? It doesn't even tell you what it is. It's just relate to your character anyway. So a long way off. Enemies now have chance to drop ingots. Look how much it cost. So it takes forever. And then the weapon, look, need 6 more, and then I can get, it's going the wrong way, it's going the opposite way, 2 light, whatever, and then I think you can do this indefinitely, probably, or maybe every, you know, so many times. But then it will be the sword after that. Even that, it's not even interesting. This is interesting. Increase sword flight, so you can probably attack twice, 2 times more. So the whole thing is, it doesn't have you here. There's nothing that says you can have an extra jump or an extra dash. Like in Hades, there's a place where you get extra jump or dash, but you don't have that here. So you don't feel, this is something I'm not interested in. Wasting resources and you don't know what you're gonna get. So, and then later on they're gonna say you need this resource for something else, but you've spent it already on garbage, right? And then this one, maximum money, I guess, yeah. Just trying to save up a bit. Maybe it for the additional chaos. Just get it to 10 or 9 or whatever, I don't know, or 7. Let's see, nothing. And then just use the crappy one.
Here's 40 pottery from a large amount of cash, but I would rather get the reputation at this point. Okay, so I cannot get iron for leisure. I can probably get scroll for education. And I don't have order for cows. That's right, over here.
Let's see, what did we get? Rather take the sword. Even the stomp can't upgrade it. This move kind of, some attacks you're invulnerable, but some boss effects you'll take damage.
I guess I can make some calls.
But it's not what it says on the store page. It's saying about high octane, high energy kind of thing. This is the most relaxing game I've ever played. It's not high, whatever, you know, it's not high, it's not like Hades or something. You might be sweating when you're playing that game. You can't do anything. You see, it slows down a lot as well, that's the thing. There's a lot of slowdown. Certain times, if there's more than 5 enemies, is gonna be slowed down. Certain moves that they do, it causes slowdown, like those samurais, those ninjas. When these lot in white, when they do that swipe, then the game can slow down. When it slows down, you're definitely gonna take damage, and let's say you'll die potentially, right? Oh, they need to look at that.
This one too. Heading back to the citadel. And then after that we can open the large one. So that's a total of +2 reputation.
But this game is still better than Rogue Legacy anyway. That's what I'd say. That game's just stupid. Rogue Legacy 2. I never played the first one before. Something about it just really annoying. Like, that vegan thing just stupid. And then I saw something else where when Baru was playing it, like, oh yeah, the censored, that wasn't interesting. I don't get it, man. What? There's a certain trait where, can't remember how they called it, but basically it's like censored, so all the enemies, you can't see them. And then there's another thing like the whole game will be upside down, and you know, the controls are reversed and everyone's upside down, and you know, like dumb stuff like that. How does it fit into the like the narrative of the game? Like, why are they putting all these really randoms? It's all random, that's what it is, yeah. All these like a lot of political kind of, you know, themes, if you want. They're not even political, just stupid stuff, you know. Just stupid stuff that they thought maybe maybe it's just for those internet jokers kind of thing, who like making, you know, they can make money off a cat or something, I don't know. And then you just make a game about, then you put it into the game like a perk to do with some, you know, stupid stuff, memes or whatever. I just don't get it, man. Does it make the game? It doesn't make sense, man. Because that game, it was kind of like medieval or something, swords and that. So why are you talking about vegan then? If this game is set in, you know, like Robin Hood times and shit, you get me? Why are you saying about, there's nobody that was a vegan back then, so why are you making it such a big thing in the, and then the censored, oh, you're not allowed to see. I just didn't get it, man. Maybe it's, I don't know. I don't understand what they're trying to do. Just full of gimmicks, that's all it is. Just gimmicks. Stupid gimmicks. The whole game. But it's not only, there's lots of games like that where there's just loads of just, it's not creative, it's just, you just filled it full of, like, kind of like what's that game called, Tiny Tina, what do you call that, what's it called now, Borderlands. Like the first, I don't even really know that much about it, because when Borderlands 1 and 2 came out, I used to hear a lot of people play it, but I didn't really, I didn't even know it was a co-op, like you can play the whole game with your, you know, friends and all that. I never even knew until several years, a long time after. But I heard the first two games were really good, and then the writing, as times have moved on in the direction they've moved now, the writing's so, they're just trying to hammer certain messages, not even in a clever or interesting way. That's the thing, it's not clever or interesting. They just stuff it down your throat, man. Even, what is it, Borderlands 3, the intro, like, why is it, if you're in the wastelands, does that mean, I understand that it's the wastelands, I've seen like Mad Max, I've seen Fist of the North Star and stuff, right? But, you know, in those stories, they didn't just, people got killed, like, definitely a lot of people are getting killed and stuff. Let's say Fist of the North Star, right? The raiders and the bandits, but they didn't just, not exactly for fun, they like how they show it in Borderlands, like they'll have a raider, so-called raider, and just for no reason he or she, usually he's gonna be getting totally killed in a just weird and strange kind of thing. Like, these lot are called raiders, okay? They're raiders, and you're called what are you called in it? They call you what are they called now? Not a Tomb Raider, what are they called? What's it called? Borderlands. They're not called Borderlanders. What are they called now? What are they called in Borderlands. They call you what is it? Crypt? What is it? Borderlands. What do they say you are? You're not a bounty hunter. What is the what's it called now? Borderlands. They call you not a vault finder or something, isn't it? A vault keeper, or what is it? A vault hunter? What is it? Vault hunters, right? Is it vault hunter? No. What's it called? It's called vault hunters. Yeah, but come on, vault hunters. Is it Borderlands? Vault hunter. That's what it is. They call you a vault hunter, and basically you're alright because you're a vault hunter. That's what it is. Because they've called you a vault hunter, you're okay. But everyone else, they call them raiders, and it's alright to just kill them, kind of thing. Like for an intro, they just killed them in the game, kind of thing. I just don't get it, man. It's like, what kind of story is it? What are they? Is that the true world of Borderlands, where just because you're a raider, so-called, we're just gonna, you know, the heroes or whatever, the vault hunters, they're alright doing, they're the same, they're all the same. They're the same. But anyway, I heard the story was really good in part 1 and 2, and then 3 and onwards, then they don't even create a story. They just like promote certain things that they want to promote, right? That's all. They don't even try and weave it into the story or anything. They just throw it right into your face. So, but that's still not, it's not the same. Like it doesn't affect the gameplay though, I don't think, other than it being distracting. But Rogue Legacy, it does distract. Why is it that everything's upside down and you can't see the enemies? You know, it's all blurred. Well, how does it make sense when you're in a medieval setting or whatever? Why have you said about vegan? Because you're making the game and you decided to make it as chicken or meat as the food. So why are you saying about vegan, if you eat meat, that you're gonna die? That's fucking stupid. It's just dumb, man. Why did you make meat as food then? Or to replenish your health? Why not put it as something else then? Because it doesn't make sense to say that the health item is going to kill you because you're a vegan, and then vegan is not. That's not what vegan is. Does that what vegan mean? That if you eat a vegan is someone that if they consumed meat, they'd die. That's what happens in Rogue Legacy 2. So is that what they're saying vegan is? That a vegan is an individual who, when they were to consume meat, they'd die? That's stupid. So what kind of game are you making then, idiot? Just fucking dumb. Okay, anyway.
Guarantee if you like long enough. So don't do
See
it.
what? Maybe this guy's talking sense. What's his name? JP. That's why there's so many millionaires, you know, because everyone accepts just any kind of bullshit and just fucking buy it. No one wants to think about anything. Oh, collector's edition of this crap, and why is it a collector's edition when there's about 1 million of them? What is it? A stupid statue. I'm like crying over. Oh, there was this game. What was it called? Kingdom Hearts. They were talking about it, and they were putting a certain character in another game. I don't know, maybe Smash or something. And then they were showing videos of people crying about how happy they were that this stupid character's in this game. What the hell? They must be getting paid heavily or what? What are you crying? What are you on about? What are they talking about, man? Some stupid, crappy game. I mean, what is the story? What's so mad? What's so great about it? Nobody even knows what the story is. If you ask somebody, what is it about? They can't even fucking tell you. So why are you crying about it for? I don't get it. Anyway. So there was nothing going on here. So might as well look at a weapon maybe. This one is close range, 239. This one is 200. It's a little bit better. This one I just don't like it. But 13 chance to kill, I'll take it, you know, just because of that rule. 13 chance % to kill, maybe. That's why I'm getting it, not because of the weapon, just because of that thing. And maybe if I get to the next map, then there might be something better, something better. Because he never said about King Arthur, what's going on? What's happened with... Look, I can't get across here without taking damage. Oh, okay, I was wrong. Yeah, what happened with your playthrough?
Potentially, but I'm okay with it because, again, I think that should be illegal. But I also believe her, so I think
Right.
once she does lie, it's fine. But I also believe her in this situation.
So you're fine with the
Had
lie,
to
but like,
look up
you're
the name.
okay with it.
Yeah,
But the chocolate cream cold brew,
they do
That
that.
is-
They have different flavors of it now.
yeah. Yes,
Oh.
they have different flavors now, and it's very dangerous.
I
They
didn't know
have
that.
like vanilla cream, and
That's
then they have
nice.
chocolate cream. Yeah. And then I think they have salted caramel. I don't know what it is. I've never really had salted caramel.
What is wrong with you?
Same.
You guys are
I don't
both
know.
not human beings.
Sorry.
You're lizards.
I don't
You
know.
guys are both lizards.
Pretzels, pretzels, they come with salt. I always put my pretzels
Yeah.
with salt. I'm not a big salt.
Me too. I knock the extra salt off because there is some salt that's okay, but they always like over salt.
Did we just become best friends? What just happened here?
No.
Yeah, we
You
did.
need salt in your diet. Get the salt. You need salt. Take it.
Are you one of those people that salt fries, baby?
Like extra salt, my friends? No. I just eat the fries how they come salted. I don't
Because your fries sometimes come with a pack of salt, and every time someone opens one and sprinkles it on their fries, I've met like 3 people in
That's
my life.
absurd.
I always consider whether or not they're a demon. Where I'm like,
Yeah.
you
That's
salted your Wendy's fry, you must be a demon.
What are you talking about?
Most of these
Idiot.
places like actually over salt all their fries. They're
Yeah.
putting more salt on
Yeah.
them.
You know,
Yeah.
absolutely, as a person who in his youth worked in McDonald's, let me tell you something, that stuff. You know how they get the fries out of the oil
Yeah.
and dump them in that bin and
Yeah.
they salt them?
And they put the
What
giant
ends up
salt
happening
in
is,
it.
yeah, they get a little shaker. They'll
Yeah.
go through like half a thing of fries, and then some manager will be like, we need more fries. They put fries down, pull the fries out, dump them on the fries that are already there, re-salt. So now the fries in the back have been salted twice.
Yeah.
And sometimes I would dare say 3 times.
Yep.
So every once in a while you'll get like that mega salted fry. That's because you got one of them back ass fries.
Let me ask you this. Here's the truest test of fast food eaters. I will gatekeep a fast food eater from calling themselves a fast food connoisseur.
Uh-huh.
Do you eat the fries before you get home? No matter what. Is it a race to finish all your fries before you step out of that car? There's only
Yes.
one
It's not a
answer.
race.
It's a race every time.
But I can guarantee there'll be no fries when I get home.
Yes, and I regret it every time. So I don't know if I qualify. I regret it every time.
Every time I'm like,
Then
I'm
I
not
sit
going to
there
touch these
eating my
fries.
burger. Yeah. And then I'm just sitting there eating a burger by itself. And I'm like, you know what would have gone really well with this? The fries that I ate in the fucking
Correct.
car.
And here's the other fucked up situation. If you wait to eat the fries when you get home, you'll actually eat less fries because they're going to be a little bit colder, but it's better for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Instead of just
You
gorging
know
on
what's better for you? Delicious hot fries. That's better.
Yes, yes. There's this delicious chain. It's in Oregon and Southern Washington called Burgerville. I
Okay.
used to be obsessed with this place when I lived in Portland. And their whole specialty is they only use like local ingredients, but they are like a fast food place.
Yeah, yeah.
And so they have these Yukon Gold waffle fries.
Ooh.
I don't think they ever survived until it was time to eat that Colossus burger.
Waffle fries
Like I don't
are
think they're so good, and they make them out of these Yukon Gold potatoes. And then seasonally, they would have rosemary shoestring fries.
Ooh.
I don't think those fries ever survived.
You ever had sweet potato waffle fries? Good little cinnamon.
I don't think I've ever had sweet potato waffle fries.
They're pretty tasty.
That sounds good, but do they go well with the burger with cinnamon on them?
No. They're usually like a dessert type deal.
Okay, yeah. I was gonna say, it kind of sounds like their own dish. I'd be down.
They'll give you like a brown sugar cinnamon sauce or something like that. Pretty good.
You know what I love? So I'm on their website, and this is how I know this is the Pacific Northwest. Is that the kids' meals just has a wild Alaskan halibut fish and chips meal. The kids' meal.
Yeah.
Frankly, I'm totally here for that. I love that. It's not like eat chicken strips, you son of a bitch. It's like so wild Alaskan halibut. I'm like, this is great. I'm here for this. Love it.
Yeah, no,
Also,
burger is great.
they have an ice cream sandwich that I'm like, let's go sandwich. I've been all
Next
about ice cream
time
sandwiches
you're-
since they took the taco.
Never had
Next time you're in Portland, I'll take you, Jesse, to Burgerville. Their seasonal shakes are to fucking go for. Like if they're like, our seasonal shake right now is our berry shake. Fucking chocolate, fucking vanilla. Get whatever the seasonal shake is. If they're like, seasonal shake is a huckleberry shake, just get it. And it's gonna be the best shake you've ever had. They do whatever berry is in season. It's so crazy. Right now it's like a raspberry. But like because Washington and Oregon have so many berries, they'll like be like, you know, here are seasonals or it's a huckleberry shake or a berry shake. And then they're so good.
Your Northwestern teen girl voice is the funniest shit I've ever heard. Like, berry.
Yeah, no, that's the girl that works at the Burgerville drive-thru. I would do a travel series with Jesse and it would break the internet. Because the other place I would take Jesse is Leavenworth.
Years ago we did one. Yeah, I do another one in a heartbeat. That's great.
Hire me, Jesse. I'll take you to Leavenworth. It's like this little town, like out here that is like little Bavaria. It's inexplicably Bavarian, and they have a bunch of German restaurants there. And if you want like huckleberry lemonade, you go there, you eat some schnitzel, you walk around, you get beer and a stein, like and you can go fucking beer tubing down the river, all in one trip.
Hey.
It's a Bavarian berry.
Bavaria.
Down the river.
And do they have a Bavarian berry?
A Bavarian berry.
Is that how they make a beer?
You've got like a sausage shop, like with apple sauerkraut, and they've got pretzel places and like beer cheese and.
Yeah, isn't there a prison in Leavenworth?
See that? It just started again.
Isn't there? There's gotta be a big prison.
But that's not Washington.
I'm Googling.
Yeah, no, that can't be the same one.
That's not. Is it camp?
Yeah, that's Kansas, right?
That's in Kansas. Yeah, that's more.
Yeah.
Kansas for sure. Why is Leavenworth?
Are you basing all this off of the movie Con Air? I believe this is the plot point of Con Air, I think.
There are Google reviews of Leavenworth County Jail. What?
Yeah, but Leavenworth County Jail is different.
The reviews are Deputy Jay Zimmerman is a constant deputy with the Leavenworth County Sheriff's Department. He performs his duties with complete passion and empathy for those misfortunate. He's a gentleman, soft-spoken in his demeanor and profound convictions for those he serves. It was a pleasure being arrested by Becky. You're like, what the fuck? Why did you leave a Google review for someone that arrested you? People are insane.
Now, if people leave Google reviews for buses.
That is actually understandable, though. That makes like people know the experiences of a bus, but of a prison. I don't know about that. That's got to be a paid. Yeah, it was a pleasure being arrested. What the fuck is that? Jesse's looking up some shit as well. He's not blowing my
I mean, I just need to verify
that this is a thing.
That's in Con Air.
Oh.
I mean, yeah.
Didn't you watch Con Air like 2 weeks ago?
I 100% did, which is why this rings true to me. Poe was a convict. Yeah, Poe was convicted for murder as a U.S. Army Ranger. Oh, interesting. Never mind. Maybe that's where I remember it from. Either way.
Not they don't do 11 work.
No, there's some guy on the internet complaining about how, as a member of the military, he should have served his time at Fort Leavenworth and not a normal prison, which is why the movie makes no sense. But I dare say, nothing about that movie makes sense. Why are you questioning anything in that movie?
I don't know.
There's no reason for any of those people to be on the same flight together. Why would a man being released on parole take a plane home? That makes no sense. Don't question any of it. Just accept it.
That's our review of Con Air.
That's why there's so many millionaires.
Jesse, everything been good with you besides Con Air?
You can just write anything.
Last 2 weeks, that was probably the highlight, right? Last 2 weeks. Watch that movie.
I wouldn't say that, but
Good.
it certainly was a little bit of light shine through. I don't know, the last couple of weeks have been just wacky good fun. So I'm excited to talk about, let's be real, the real excitement. X-Men.
It's
I
not
thought we were not
also
talking about that today.
Yeah. We'll see if we have time. We have so much thing.
We're not talking about X-Men?
We're not talking about it today.
Might.
You know,
We'll see.
we're talking. It wasn't in the tweet.
It wasn't in the tweet. That's correct. It's not in the tweet. Yes, we haven't talked about any of the San Diego Comic Con.
We're not going to talk about how Gambit hit on everyone in the first 3 episodes. We're not going to talk about how Aurora Monroe slaps her wings when she flies. We're not going to talk about how Jubilee spends the first 40 minutes of the 2 episodes going, why is everyone chasing me?
Yeah.
I'm just a girl. I'm the worst ever. We're not going to talk about how Worf talks like, hello, my name is Worf, but laughs like, we're not going to talk about any of that.
Not yet.
Oh my god. Oh
Not
my
yet.
god.
We haven't talked about all the San Diego Comic Con stuff, so the people in my chat asking me when I'm talking about San Diego Comic Con
Flaps
stuff.
her wings to fly.
Stop asking me what I'm going to ask you. Talk about it. He does not know.
Yeah, she does.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I don't know what we're going to do with X-Men, because we got 3 episodes, including today's, before She-Hulk. So maybe we double up. Maybe we just do the first, 8 episodes or 9. I don't know.
I just want to talk about whatever, all the weird shit that I saw. That I was like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
When was the last time you had watched it?
When I was a kid. I haven't seen this since I was a child.
It's pretty wild shit. Jubilee just runs around in the first. You're right.
There's a scene where Julie runs down the street and the camera pans over. And there's a sentinel posted up on a wall like,
Yeah,
it is so fun.
oh wait, yes, I am Groot XP. You might be right. That might be a thing. We've got a timeline, I think. We're done on that. Let's just roll through the announcements. There was a lot at old San Diego Comic Con. I will spoil this stuff. Jesse's going to mention it. We're going to get it out of the way. They didn't mention the man in the ocean. Jesse. You got nothing. No mention of it at all. Anyway.
There's no war boss in the second. Don't worry about it.
Nothing. Nothing going on with the man in the ocean. Do you think the interviewers are not allowed to ask Kevin about that? Like, why isn't that the first thing they're like? If they're looking for gotcha questions, why wouldn't they ask them? They want to ask about things they're not going to get. They're like, oh no, what's King's outfit? Oh, I can't talk about that. Okay. Can't say anything about that. Am I even in that movie? I don't know. Who could say? Did they announce that? Oh, yeah, I'm in that movie. That's like how that
Are we like backseat question asking? Yeah, we're like, what? Stupid question! Ask a better question, you idiot!
It's not ask a better question, it's ask the question. And that's the question, I think, right now, Grace.
What do you expect
The answer's going to be?
from an audience that anytime you point anything like this out, they say, why can't you just turn your brain off and enjoy the movies? And it's like, I'm trying to. You know, like, who told them to put a giant in the ocean?
Yeah.
You know? Like, at some point it has to be addressed, right?
I mean, here's the thing. We get through Black Panther and they don't address it. Then
Well, it came from the ocean. You think Namor would be kind of impressed about this, you know?
if we don't get an answer in Black Panther, that will never be answered. Then they would have forgotten about it.
Yeah,
I think the worst part of Eternals has been that they said multiple times that Eternals was the most important MCU film, and yet it has had zero impact on anything.
Yes. Yeah.
And I know people are going to be like, well, it's going to have that Infinity round. The entire phase went by with Eternals kind of being at the beginning of the phase. It shouldn't take a phase, like the second phase, for some impact to be felt, especially with how much that movie was touted as like, this is going to be the foundational, like, important work of the MCU. And then it feels like, because maybe that movie wasn't as popular as they wanted or wasn't as well received as they wanted, that they kind of, like, pulled back on that, which I think is like a disservice. Like, well, no, if it's important, just keep it important.
Yeah.
You can't just find it off now that you don't like how the movie was received.
I agree. Again, it's got to be answered in Black Panther. If it's not, then I'm just going to stop asking about it for
Namor isn't like, I'm so mad.
There's a giant guy.
Yeah, a guy up here killed people. There's got to be a reason behind it. And it's something as silly as like, I don't even know, any other contrived plot that if it doesn't involve a damn body in the ocean, you're absolutely right. They'll never address it.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah. We will see. The first thing we can kind of roll through the timeline of announcements, starting with first. The first one was that Marvel Phase 4 is done with Wakanda Forever this November. Final film in Phase 4, which is both, I guess, expected, but also kind of came out of nowhere. Like, we didn't really know what was going on in terms of the phases at all, so it seems like that retreat, after all the announcements over the San Diego Comic Con weekend, it seems like that retreat definitely helped them kind of lay out everything and shape everything. I think it's, 50 hours of TV shows and movies was all of Phase 4. It's the longest phase that Marvel's done so far in the MCU by a considerable amount. I think the first 3 phases are still less than all of Phase 4 if you combine them to kind of show you how much content was there. But, yeah.
But what about the quality?
Oh, well, it's hard to say it was the worst. It had the hitters, right? But it also had the misses. But I think every phase had the misses.
I think it's like, okay, here's kind of my upset with it. It had the most minutes or actual runtime of like any other phase of all the other two phases combined.
Yeah.
And yet it still kind of felt like it was pulling like, how do I describe it? Like let's test this out, let's test that out. Like they didn't ever fully commit to like anything.
Yeah.
And so the result is kind of a lackluster phase in my opinion. Whereas like formally it was like, okay, this is your villain. This is going to be who we're going in for, and these are the heroes that are going to be at the forefront of it. And so these are upfront. And this one, it's like, well, let's see who's popular, who's working out, and who's not. Let's give them a bunch of shows where they only get 6 episodes and the writing's rushed and the plot is not thoroughly developed, and we don't really take time to develop the villains because we don't really have time to 6 episode miniseries. Because we don't want to invest more than that in Moon Knight or a Falcon and Winter Soldier, you know, we don't want to invest more than that. It's like, then how the fuck do you expect us to develop an attachment, or like, if you're not willing to invest or go all in on Hawkeye, how do you expect the audience to do that and be invested in Echo and the spin-offs? Like, when it was very clear that Hawkeye was like testing the waters to see how these characters could do, you know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's, if you don't have any confidence, your audience isn't going to have any confidence, and the result is mostly people are asking the question, really? Echo's getting a show? Like, do people care? And it's like,
Everyone's getting
I'm
a
sure
show.
that. Yeah, everybody's getting a show now, but it's still clear the ones they believe in, right? Daredevil, because there's a track of success there, and that's why Daredevil actually has a decent number of episodes to tell an actual story, which, of course, I'm thrilled about. I'm sure you guys are thrilled about. I know we're all huge Daredevil fans here. But I think the reason that Daredevil isn't getting a shitty 6-episode pilot, let's be real, that's what this episode, 6-episode pilot, is because Daredevil has 3 seasons that already did well on that.
Yeah, they're now part of
So
Disney Plus, right? So the groundwork's there.
Yeah.
But I wonder how that's going to work from we'll save the Daredevil talk until we get back. But yeah, very interested to see how that all goes. But yeah, I agree with you, Bron. I think also Marvel is, they kind of like put themselves in a rough spot because like phase 1 and phase 2 was basically we're going to introduce all these villains that are just foils of the characters that we're fighting for, right? And so then like the idea of the movie or well, I guess they were all movies back then. All the movies being like formulaic, right? That became that became the discussion around those films. It's like, oh, these are all the same thing, right? You have a hero, something bad happens, so then they become a superhero, and then they fight a foil or whatever the superhero powers are. That was kind of like phase 1 and phase 2. And then they kind of went the opposite way, where they didn't really have villains in some cases like they did. They're kind of physical group in a lot of ways. And then they had, of course, the entire villain stuff. And that just got bigger and bigger as time went on, which I think is why phase 2 and phase 3 are so highly regarded, right? The latter half of phase 2. So hopefully, like phase 5 and phase 6, we see Marvel find between striking a formulaic stance and like being undertook on all this stuff. Moving forward, that's my hope. I think they can, right? Because if anything, phase 4 was the test phase. They wanted to see what was going to work. They wanted to see what characters were going to hit. Now they kind of have those characters that are going to hit, those characters that are tested well, and they can kind of push those stories forward.
What characters do you think hit?
I think characters that hit. Definitely Shang-Chi. Definitely think he is a fan favorite. I think, I mean, is this a personal, are you asking personally, or are you asking just across the board? So I would say like Moon Knight hit, I think that's more personal.
Across the board. Just like across
Yelena.
the board.
Yeah, Yelena.
Agreed.
I think Yelena is a fan favorite. I think like they tested with her on the big screen and the small screen to see like, and I think like she could carry a show easily.
Yes, I agree.
Easily.
I mean, you can look at the stuff they announced, right? Loki, for sure. We're going to see through that. I think he was already established going into the show, which is probably why that show was so good because they didn't have to spend 6 episodes building the character. They already knew the character. They built a.
I think it was more testing Kang and Sylvie than anything.
Yeah, and probably testing the
Morbius.
multiverse as well. Like the idea of doing that. What else was there?
I mean, if they don't bring Morbius back, that's going to be a huge L for them.
Yes. Oh, he's in season 2.
Yeah, he's so cool.
Yeah, he's awesome.
But I know that the Sylvie Loki love story was like the big thing, but I don't care what anybody says. The Loki Morbius romance, I was there for all of it.
I think
All
everyone
of
that
it.
was in that, even like Miss Minutes. Like
I
everyone
was like buddy cop. I understand. I'm like a big fan of Miami Vice, like 80s, like dudes in suits that are like just like such good friends. Like that. Oh man, that. Woo!
That's what that show is.
Gets me so happy.
Yeah. Just freaking out.
What?
I know you met Mobius, Hans.
Oh, morbid. Oh my god, am I morbid? Am I morbid? I'm morbid. I'm morbid.
Loki and Mobius are like, I'm like the Lokis. I'm like the whole moment.
Yeah.
Oh my god, no, you're 100% right. It's morbid time. I was morbid out. Morbid out, guys.
I don't blame you.
It doesn't help. Mobius is so much harder for me to say than Morbius. Morbius is very easy for me to say. Mobius is the actual effort.
Sure.
Like the name. Honestly, anything Scottish is like possible for me to fucking say.
Sure.
How dare you put TH and with a E-I combination and expect my fucking misty ass to be able to pronounce it? But Mobius is the same thing. Putting like a B after an O and an E, I'm like, I'm supposed to say that? So Morbius is super easy for me to say. I love it. I love it.
We must be low.
Yeah, but I also just straight up misspoke.
I mean, look, that'll happen. Morbius gets in the mind and
You get morbid.
It's like a venereal disease.
yes, yeah. It gets all up in there. How it goes.
I probably infected the rest of the MCU crew with it. They're all morbid now.
We're all morbid out of control. Jesse, you asked who is tested. I think Blade is like, people are excited because Blade has 3 movies. Even if they have no relationship to this character, to the MCU version of Blade. Still thing.
I don't have
That's
faith.
crazy to me.
I mean, I hope it's good.
I have faith because 1, it's established and they kind of know what to do. And 2, I think the actor playing Blade is potentially the best actor in the entire MCU. In terms of other stuff that they've done, he's definitely up there, if not the.
Oh yeah, I can definitely do that. Mahershala is like
They're insane.
Amazing.
Like, they're just God, yeah.
yeah.
So I have faith in that, and I think other people, like if we're going on the side of or the condition of tested, I think Blade's that as well. I think it's got enough to get into people into seats. Ironheart, that one's a gamble, right? That can either be hit or miss come Black Panther 2, because that's where she's going to be introduced. I don't know if that's going to be there. Agatha.
Agatha was huge. So when WandaVision was airing on TikTok, there were so many Agatha fan reels, and that's how I know she's popular. There was so much with sex that music. It was Agatha all along, and it was just like smash cuts of her. Like she was kind of the breakout star of that show. From like, and I'm not saying like, oh, Olsen didn't do well, but like people already knew Olsen.
Right.
But like, yeah, like she was everywhere. That song was everywhere
That song
on
was
social
kind of
media.
big, yeah. They
Yeah,
even
so I
devoted
thought she
marketing
was-
to like doing it behind the scenes on how that song was crafted. How to
Yeah,
listen to it. So,
no,
right.
she was huge. She was everywhere. I
Yeah.
mean, but she also acted her fucking ass off.
Yeah, she was very good. She was very good.
She was so good. I still get chills. Like all of my favorite scenes from that show were her. I still get chills when she's like, "You want me to take that again?"
Yeah, when she like turns.
Where like that scene,
Yeah.
yeah, and then she like goes back and then like comes back. I was like, "Oh my god, she's so good!
Yeah, yeah,
She's
you're
so
right.
amazing!"
I
In her
forgot.
role, like I would just watch her, and then like even when she's in the car like crying, and then she's like, anyways, and then like I was like, she's so good, she's
Yeah.
so diabolically evil.
For sure.
I cannot handle her. I just love. So I don't know what the story is going to be. I mean, House of Park kind of tells us, you know, what it's going to be. But
Yeah.
still, I think
So we don't really know what any of that means.
I think if anything, I hope it's a self. I think what Marvel needs to do more of is like a storyline that doesn't impact cinematic universe. They can do more with.
Yeah, where it
Right.
doesn't have the hook stack in the MCU. That's good. Good idea. Right.
Then they can just kind of they can do more with it. And I feel like that's kind of what worked in Moon Knight's favor. Is it doesn't actually directly tie into anything in the movies. So because of that, they have more liberty with defeating a certain villain or doing that because they don't have to, you know. I'm sorry, I'm like trying to. They don't have to have that like consequences of what happened in Moon Knight. Yeah, connect to the movie. They could do more. They can have a giant god battle over the pyramid because it doesn't have to directly relate to a film.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I also,
that's just.
speaking on like phase 4, and really all 4 of the phases until now, only because I think we're getting into territory where the villains are so much more interesting that they're going to be bringing in. I hope they learn to not kill people off. Right?
I hope so too.
Like, I really want characters to exist, even if they're bad guys. Like for example, what they did with Zemo was like a perfect way to handle that in Civil War. Like, he was a bad guy, did some bad shit, and he had like a pretty good ending that did a little bit more than him just like dying. Because if he dies,
Yeah.
then you can't flush a character out. And now, like, he's going to be in Thunderbolts most likely, and like, he was in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and like, he was probably one of my favorite parts of both those films.
I think that's another one of the ones you were saying, like a tested, or Jesse was asking, like a tested character.
Yeah.
I think Zemo passed the test. He was also, I saw clips of him all over the place dancing in the art
Yes.
gallery.
That's
He was
great.
all over the place. Turkish Delight was all over the place. Like,
You're right.
he was popping. He was
Yeah.
popping.
Yeah. They're good. I hope they do.
In phase 2 and 3, I thought they had learned their lesson about killing those villains.
Yeah.
They had because in phase 1, Tony Stark did it all the time. But I feel like
I will never forgive them for the Mandarin bullshit. I will never forgive them for the Mandarin bullshit. I was like, they finally amended some of it with Shang-Chi.
I think Shang-Chi hit with the Mandarin more so because it already existed in the canon. And so it was like, you know, meeting Trevor and like that whole, Trevor was fantastic. His whole thing was great in Shang-Chi. The only reason he was there is because Martin Luther.
The thing they need to do is give Kang. I imagine it's already whatever they're gonna do. They're already gonna do. The thing they need to do for Doctor Doom is they need to like. Doctor Doom is more than just a villain. Doctor Doom is like a whole thing.
Yeah.
And in order to do it right, you have to give Doctor Doom like the Thanos treatment, but like times 3. Like you
Right.
need, like you know, you need a doctor. The first Avengers Infinity War movie is literally the story of the villain, right? So we need that, but like 3 of those bitches.
Yeah.
Doctor Doom has so much stuff going on. By the time we get to Fantastic Four, Doctor Doom should already have like a full setup. You do a whole thing of like, Doctor Doom's been in a bunch of movies already. You already know who this guy is.
Yeah.
He's been in the background, like, I don't know, evil dude.
I think we're going to see Black Panther too, so you're on.
I mean, like, what is the last thing that they want to do is the Avengers came down and then Secret Wars? They're doing Secret Wars as the last movie of Phase 6 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
They need to, like, Doom needs to be huge by that point.
I think he will. I mean, if he's in Black Panther 2, I think he's going to be relevant. I think both him and Danny will.
I'm just saying. Like that movie, you're doing Secret Wars, Doom's huge. So,
Yeah. I think
I will not settle for another
One and done.
before.
Yeah. We were talking about Mahershala, right? And like that was the one, and people always, like, when we show our ranking, that's the one I was asking about. I was like, why is Luke Cage so low? And I think it's because, like, that was the biggest upset to, like, have this really great hot mouth, and then he's dead halfway through season 1. You're just like, what the fuck? You know, like, I was mad. I was like, oh my god, fuck you. Who the hell cares about this other motherfucker outfit in here? This is some bullshit. Why the fuck would you do that? You know? I was so annoyed. I know other people were too. We had this like really great villain. He doesn't even last the whole season. And then we look at Daredevil, and I think one of the coolest things about Wilson Fisk is that he is so hard to take down. You know, like every time that Matt Murdock thinks he's got him, Wilson Fisk is like one step ahead. Like, oh bitch, you thought I staged my own stabbing in prison so I can get out of prison, and actually it was me all along. And it's like, oh, that's so cool. Yeah. Like, you know, and we're excited for this to come back, which is why I think we're so underwhelmed with his writing, not his Vincent D'Onofrio is the genius, but like his writing in Hawkeye, he's just this big guy that walks around and gets shot and nothing happens to him, because it is the mastermind aspect of it that is like so scary, where he's just so far ahead of everyone. And last week, the week before last, I had like this bi-weekly comic show called Bag and Murder on my channel now, humble plug. But currently what's happening in the comics is that Luke Cage has finally supplanted Wilson Fisk as the mayor of New York. But this is how fucking powerful he is. He is like the mayor and popular. And there's like riots happening, very reminiscent of the January riot. Yeah, it's got some nods to like what's happening in America. But it's like people are freaking out that Wilson Fisk was replaced by this superhero as the mayor of New York. Like, that's how powerful he is. It's like, he will fuck you up using the system against you. And that's so scary, because other criminals just throw them in jail and they go away. They'll come out of jail and somehow be elected to a high office and have more power than you could ever hope for. Yeah. So I hope he gets that right in the 18-episode series, you know?
Well, that's the power of a good protagonist-antagonist relationship, where you have, you know, everyone loves the idea of Fisk and Daredevil just butting heads. The same thing as like Joker and Batman. It is like you don't like when someone says we're gonna kill one of these two. It's like, I would like to watch them fight forever. You see, and that is the thing with Dr. Doom. Dr. Doom's that guy where it's like, I want to watch him be a bad guy forever because he's that entertaining as a villain. It's the same thing with Magneto and Charles. It's the idea of getting rid of one of them is always atrocious and should be off the board entirely. And I know people do it for shock, don't care. I love when you give like a villain the time to shine, because it makes the hero and their relationship all that much better. Right? If you just gave us the version of the Hawkeye Wilson Fisk, that Kingpin showed up in the first 3 seasons of Daredevil, we wouldn't give a shit about it. They gave us a Kingpin. It was fascinating to watch. Like, that first season where you're just staring at paintings, that's just great. I love that stuff. Sure. So, yeah, I'm very curious what they're going to do. I hope they make it. My preference for Dr. Doom is that from Phase 5 on, he is the guy in the end credits of everything. Like, you know, he just shows up like,
yeah, I think
the background control.
I think he could be. I definitely think he could be. I hope they give the first like Marvel anti-hero film. I really hope that's really good. Where he takes to his own film, and it's not like a good guy film. Like it's. I think Thunderbolts will probably like test that water in terms of having the anti-heroes in it. And that's kind of been tested with Suicide Squad, right? Like they've done 2 of those and seem to do pretty well. I think we'll test that with Thunderbolts, and then we'll see in like Phase 5 or Phase 6 that Doom's experience. I hope.
I mean, it's worked in the comics, and it's the one part of the Thanos saga that I will never get over is we didn't get a Thanos movie.
Yeah.
And yet we saw like Proxima Midnight and like all these people displayed, and like we saw his theory, for lack of a better word. But comics that they're introduced in are so
They make those characters a lot more badass, yeah.
and I wish we had known more about them. Because I think if you know that, you're just like, the Corvus blade can't die as long as his blade is intact.
Yeah.
Like, the only way to kill him is to somehow break that blade. Like, those characters are actually, Ebony Maw is so cool. And that, like, sort of rogues gallery, doing evil shit across the galaxy is a movie I would have something like,
I think
they're horrible people. They fight each other when they're not fighting other people.
it is not fighting. I think
Yeah,
people,
they'll either subjugate planets, and when they have nothing to do, it's like, y'all familiar with the Total War Warhammer mechanics with works where they start fighting each other if they're not fighting other people? That's them. They start, like, going at each other. It's actually kind of amazing.
I think that would also do well with the Marvel audience, especially people that maybe like falling off the Marvel audience, like getting them back on board to just show, like, not necessarily a bad guy, but like not a good guy, not someone that's gonna have like crazy dramatic superhero music because they're like saving a town. Like, no, these people murdered a shit ton of people. Here's some badass music. Murder a shit ton of people, and then like
That's like
they have
nuance too.
the good guys show up in that film every once in a while. They got time, right? I think that'd be cool.
Mm-hmm. I think, like, the cool thing about those comic books was, like, Thanos seems nice in comparison. Because, like, he brings Gamora onto the ship, and Ebony Maw's like, I'm gonna kill this small fucking child. And you're like, why? And he's like, because. Like, by comparison, it's like, oh, Thanos thinks he's doing the right thing. Some of these motherfuckers do not think they're doing the right thing, and they don't care, you know? So it's like, kind of, even that's interesting. I'm excited about that aspect of the Thunderbolt, because you do have that creation there as well, whereas I don't believe Zemo is as evil as some of the other members of the Thunderbolt.
Right.
When you think back to Zemo's motivation, he's actually incredibly fucking justified in wanting to tear apart the Avengers, because they really had no right killing his entire family. That wasn't a decision for them to make. So it is, like, interesting to see how that character is going to play off potentially not as morally great characters, the characters that are more okay with killing or something like that. I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting. I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be one of the things I enjoy more out of this coming.
Yeah, yeah. I'll go ahead and show the full timeline now that they announced it at San Diego Comic-Con. We can just go through this or pick whichever one we're most excited about or whatever. We can talk about them all. The Quantumania stuff, I don't know if you guys saw any of the leaked footage of that came out of this. They showed some clips from it at San Diego Comic-Con, but they did not share those with the rest of us. Some of that stuff leaked. One of them is a scene where Ant-Man's standing there, and Kang walks up and asks him if he's an Avenger. And Ant-Man says, like, yeah, I'm an Avenger or something like that. You get a full reveal of Kang standing there. It says, have I killed you before? I think it's a fucking badass line for someone who's like an enemy of the multiverse, asking a random Avenger if I've killed you before. It makes me very excited to see, like, more of Kang throughout the entire thing. I think we're going to see multiple versions. I know we're going to see multiple versions because he said so in an interview, but I want to see, like, a good Kang with also the bad Kings, because there's, like, the Iron Man King. I forgot what the name is. Iron Lad, maybe?
Yeah,
Yeah, he's probably going to pop up somewhere, right? Like, he's pretty important.
But his whole storyline is super convoluted.
It's very,
like, you would have
be
to,
convoluted.
yeah, you have to bring in Moon Knight to justify the ancient Egyptian past and stuff. Like, there's so much going on there.
Oh, the Ramatet stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much.
Like, how do you, if they give us, like, a neutered Kang, like a Kang where they leave that shit out, I'd kind of be a little bit upset. I want to see all the versions of it.
What I'm curious about is, just look at, so, this is Phase 5, right?
Yep.
If you look at Phase 5, Quantumania is up first. Quantumania is 100% the introduction of Kang to the movieverse, right?
He's confirmed.
And that's Totally fine. Great. The next thing is Secret Invasion, which is a scroll thing.
Yep.
Then
Sam Jackson.
the Guardians of the Galaxy, which is a space thing that involves Adam Warlock, not Kang. Then you have Echo, which is a street level thing. You have Loki, which potentially involves Kang, one would assume, because of the timeline, right?
Very much Kang.
So we're looking at February Kang, Summer Kang. Marvels is not going to be about Kang. Blade is not going to be about Kang. Ironheart is not going to be about Kang. Agatha is not going to be about Kang. Daredevil not going to be about Kang. Captain America New World Order, I imagine because New World Order was the first episode of the TV show,
Yeah.
that whatever this is, it's going
First
to
episode
be...
of Iron Man.
Right. I would say if there's ever a time
Did they
for
bring
Doctor
in the
Doom to
Black
ever...
Ashes back?
I don't know. I think it's a Doctor Doom thing.
Okay.
Right? Like, I feel like there might be something's going to go on there, maybe.
Maybe,
And
yeah.
then Thunderbolts is, Thunderbolts. It's not Kang. So we have Kang, February, Kang, Summer on TV. So we have from 2022 currently, the end of 2024,
The summer of
two
20.
things with Kang. Well, if you look at Phase 6, it's 2025.
There's not, well, they're leaving a bunch of stuff. They left, they only announced a few
True.
Avengers films, but then they left everything
True,
else.
but we don't, just on the books right now, it's, unless Kang shows up in end credits of things, like Thanos.
Yeah.
We're not getting as much Kang as I would have liked. Kang's a huge villain, very important. I feel like we're missing out on good Kang. Saying.
Yeah, it makes me wonder, if we're thinking about what's going to be, tied together, right? Like, Quantumania, Loki, definitely tied together. Guardians, Marvel, tied together. Black Panther 2, Ironheart, tied together. Blade is kind of maybe going to be tied together with Agatha, potentially.
Blade is going to be...
You think it's just going to be a standoff? Standalone?
I think it's going to be him and Jon Snow going to space to save their girlfriend.
If they put Blade in space, that'd be fucking badass.
I'm just saying.
If that's how they take Blade. Like, if Blade's in a fucking space, and he's just, slicing up aliens.
We're like, you know what? You've seen Blade fight vampires. Now, Blade and Jon Snow are going to space.
Okay, that's
odd. I mean,
That's a comic. It's a comic. They fight rebels like on the dark side of the moon. It could be a thing.
Yeah.
I would have liked that if they went the direction. Jesse's put that curse on me where he's like, "Oh, this is a really good idea, so we won't do it." They had gone in the direction of talking about the Necro sword and basically if they had gone in that direction, yes, but they basically these two things go together like peanut butter and honey, right? But they didn't do that.
Yeah. I think.
Which is another example of them killing a villain, Sorry, I'm not going down that road again. I'm not going down that road.
Well, true. But you would think that once you saw the dailies of Christian Bale, everyone in that studio would have been like, all right, rewrite the ending. He does not die. How much money would it take to bring him back or something? Because it isn't the difference between Christian Bale as a villain and all the other one-off villains that have shown up and been like, the difference in the quality is so dramatic.
It's true.
The difference between I'm a creepy guy who teleports through shadows and a dude who's like, my insides are on fire and I punch women is so dramatic.
Yeah.
They would be like, whatever it takes, spend the money, bring it back.
Whatever it takes.
Christian Bale might have just said, hey, I'm doing one and done. And that was it.
I don't think so.
But you know what?
I don't know him. I don't know him. But I think actors like him understand that. I don't know how to describe it. You bring something to a character that I feel like they do. Okay, the only other person that I can liken him to is Cillian Murphy as character. And here's the thing, Cillian Murphy is a fucking serious ass goddamn fucking actor, and he took this character that I'm gonna be honest, people didn't really care about outside of those great Arkham Asylum video games. It took him to a level where anytime he was there, I was like, that shit up, right? And I love that. That's the one thing I love that Nolan did is like in that trilogy of films, like he comes back at the end, even in a small role, when he's like, death or exile, and like his entire thing there. I was like, was it a major part of the plot? I mean, not really. Did I love that he wasn't dead? Yes. And I wish Marvel did more shit like that. Where it's like, he doesn't need to be the main villain, but like seeing him again, even in a small capacity, I don't think most actors would say no. He just filled that role to the point that I'm like, clearly, get some investment in this.
At some point, though, like, if you think about, I guess it comes down to the writing, right? The only way that Gore is going to be like, the only way that I see that movie playing out with Gore's intent that was introduced in the very beginning of the movie is one, Gore dying, or two, Gore losing all of his powers and like losing the Necro Sword. And once he loses the Necro Sword, he kind of becomes a normal dude, right? Like the Necro Sword wasn't the purpose for his, or it wasn't the reasoning for him doing anything. And so if you take both those things away, I don't know what he does. And so it would.
Yeah, no, it should have been a trilogy, and I think like I understand like maybe they couldn't bring Gore back unless they do a multiverse thing, where it's like, okay, fine, you pull out your god in this reality, but there's still in the other one, and then he could be like, okay, I'm gonna go through the face. Yeah, but my upset is that they didn't do a good job. They did not even do a good job. They didn't set up the null. So like that's more so what I was talking about. Like if they had set up the whole null thing, then it would make like Blade in space. It just fucking makes sense, baby. And it's got like a perfect villain, and it ties in with Last Night shit, and it would have been really fucking up. But it was like, to me, it was a wasted opportunity of like, this is one of those rare cases where we're seeing the corruption of ultimately what is a good and even one could say pious character by this symbiote. Imagine if, you know, what this is a part of, or what it didn't ever explain the Necro Sword. At no point explain what it is.
It might have been legal. Because, like, they can't. Or, like, Sony owns that IP. So.
Yeah, but
they just changed the name, right? Like,
yeah, they just changed
you don't call it.
But then we're all that same.
Call it.
Right? Still all that shit.
I mean, they can just hit. They don't have the same name, but you feel like there's something in the store that was calling. There's this, but like I saw this thing. You can like get a whole bit out of it without dropping it.
Oh yeah,
you can do that. Speaking of Cillian Murphy, by the way, one, a lot of people are saying that he should play Doctor Doom. I don't know if that's what I want, but a lot of people are saying.
I love him. I am a Cillian Murphy super stan. I like watch everything he's in. I'm going to be seeing Oppenheimer the day it launches. I am in love with him. I still don't think he would be a good actor.
Yeah, some of the names they have going around for Dr. Doom are kind of like Giancarlo Esposito.
I think
the problem is people are looking at actors based on well, just like how well they can how good of an actor they are. Dr. Doom, it's all about voice. It's all
he's in the mask.
Yeah, it's all about the great voice that is creepy and awesome, but at the same time like brilliant and charismatic. It's a tough. You got the
They gotta find another Pedro Pascal. Like, I will never get over how well he did as Mandalorian. I will never get over it. Because Pedro always struck me as, and I'm not saying Cillian can't do it, like, Cillian acts so much with his eyes. And every role he's in, whether it's Red Eye, whether it's Sunshine, I just love it. He acts with his eyes. Like 70% of it, he doesn't even have to say something. It's like all there. It's this beautiful talent he has. If we put a mask over that, I don't know what he's capable of. Maybe he wouldn't fucking do it. Yeah. Maybe he wouldn't. I don't know. I know his voice acting capability as Scarecrow is great, but I don't know if y'all noticed, because it's Cillian, a lot of the time he wasn't wearing that Scarecrow hood.
He wasn't wearing the mask. Yeah.
He wasn't wearing it. He builds up to the mask moment where he gasses somebody without the mask on. because he's such a strong actor with his eyes and with his demeanor and how he speaks. So like we need a Pedro Pascal because there's I don't know, there's something he did with Mandalorian that I was like, acting is one thing, but acting with a helmet on your head, like damn.
Yeah, it's very
He
impressive.
doesn't
Even
did
him
that.
half the time, to be honest. Like that wasn't even.
Yeah,
Like he used to be.
Yeah, he had to stand in.
Because that's
Yeah.
what James Earl Jones did.
yeah.
Like,
I mean, it works.
That's what they did with they've already filmed scenes with Dr. Doom, right? So like,
That's what I'm saying, like, Dr. Doom-
planning for that, but
it doesn't matter to me if it's a famous actor. It doesn't matter to me who it is. As long as the voice and the emotive nature of that voice is one that gets across the action. Because, again, a good Dr. Doom, we never see his face. Not once. I don't want to see a damn thing about his face. So, and that means you don't need a famous actor. You don't have to pay a famous actor to be that star. And if anything, if you need a famous actor, there's voiceover. Then someone else is in the suit, which is fine. And you can get anyone at that point as long as their voice is good, because the guy in the suit is just a dude. And then you just dub over it, and that's fine. I would love to see what they come up with. I'm very excited.
Yeah.
It's like,
I don't know who's good.
you know, hopefully they learned their lesson, because all the other Doctor Dooms have sucked.
They've been pretty bad.
Yeah.
And he has to have a European accent, right?
I mean,